Whoo! What up, y'all? It is your boy Game Time Ty. It is Wednesday. Hump Day, as people colloquially like to call it, if I can say that word. What's good? It is July 22nd, and we did miss our stream yesterday. Work got pretty crazy, so we rescheduled it to today. Hopefully that's cool with y'all. If not, catch the VOD. No big deal. But there's some stuff going on in the NFL today. We're going to go through some news. I kind of briefly saw some stuff, but I did want to go through the news stories that kind of jumped out to me before we get into the AFC South depth chart breakdown, which is the main meat of today's show. Don't know why I had to say it like that, but hey, let's get into it. All right, y'all. Here we go. So first things first, it looks like the Jacoby Brissett contract standoff is still peaking out at the moment. It sounds like Arizona is holding pat, and same with Brissett. So Brissett reported to mandatory minicamp, but sat out voluntary offseason work as he sought a new contract that puts him in line with other starters. So we were talking about this a little bit when we broke down the NFC West, but Jacoby Brissett is clearly a bridge QB. He's not the future of this team, that's for sure. I don't think the team is looking at him as the future of this franchise. So, for whatever it's worth, I think Jacoby Brissett may be barking up the wrong tree here. I don't know what the details are of what he's asking for. I'm not sure if it's been reported yet. I mean, clearly there's no details here. We did look into this last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago at this point. Honestly, it's all blurring together. But there wasn't really much details out at that point either. So I guess the big takeaway here is clearly he's still, let me just lower this. I think it's probably too loud. The big takeaway here is obviously like, hey, Jacoby Brissett thinks he should be paid as a starter. He's clearly a starter. I don't think there's any question of whether he or Gardner Minshew is going to start. I think it is clear that Jacoby is going to start and be the person to lead this team. A couple of reasons. I think the last time we saw Gardner Minshew, it wasn't great, right? He's clearly just a backup caliber quarterback, whereas Jacoby, last time we saw him, it wasn't great either, but it was marginally better, and also this team looked, I guess, somewhat viable in some respects. So, it's hard to say going into the season, or rather late into the season, whether Jacoby's going to stay the starter here. I don't know, but Jacoby clearly believes in himself, and, more power to him, obviously, if he wants to go out and get a contract worthy of a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And again, unless it's like a 1-year deal or something like that, like I don't see Arizona really forking over that much money to Jacoby, because, again, I don't think they look at him as the future of this franchise. And unless they view maybe these next couple of years as just rebuild years, and they want to have Jacoby on the roster even with the acquisition or addition of a new quarterback next year, whether it's through free agency or most likely through the draft, right? Because they'll likely have a pretty high spot in the draft, unless some wild stuff happens, right? And I'm not going to say it's impossible. We saw Sam Darnold win a Super Bowl last year. So, hey, anything's possible. Believe in yourself, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think that's what's going to happen with Jacoby here, especially because, there's new coaching staff incoming, and there's just a lot of turnover with at least sort of personnel in the coaching staff and management. So that's not a positive look for at least a guy who's, again, not a great talent in the NFL, but starter caliber, sure. That's about all I want to go in as far as with Jacoby Brissett, but something to keep an eye on here. I don't think it's going to pan out for Jacoby again, unless he's asking for maybe a 1-year deal. But again, something to keep your eyes on, especially when it pertains to if he's even going to play to start the year, in which case, if he doesn't, then I think all of your Arizona Cardinal pass catchers get a little bit of a downgrade. So that's my opinion. Next up, we have some Carolina Panthers news. Nothing jumping out to me there. Cincinnati Bengals will induct former running back James Brooks and former tight end Bob Trumpy, wow, that's a funny name, into the team's Ring of Honor during halftime of their Week 8 game against the Titans. Cool. All right, that'll be sick. Nothing crazy there. Browns, nothing crazy with the Raiders. I guess they signed their rookie contract with Jermod McCoy. Cool. All right, yeah. I mean, obviously, like, the news is going to be very short. So, this is the one that I wanted to talk about real quick. So, Zach Charbonnet was placed on the physically unable to perform list, so the PUP, after he obviously suffered that torn ACL back in January and underwent some surgery. So, this just means that he'll probably start the year like we kind of expected, out of commission, at least for the first 4 weeks, right? So I think the minimum, if he starts the year on the PUP, I think the minimum he has to sit out is 4 games. So, once he does that, then they can open up the window of him coming back. And maybe I'm thinking about the IR. Either way, I don't think anybody is expecting Zach Charbonnet to be active or at least be viable in this offense till at least like week 5, week 6 at the earliest, right? So that just, I guess, is a little bit of good news for the Jadarian Price fans out there who believe in him and think that with this 4 to 5 week period without Zach Charbonnet, he's going to solidify himself as the number 1 RB in Seattle's offense. So I'm on the fence with that one. Like, I think I want to see more. I think I want to see some preseason action from Jadarian Price for sure. And I definitely just want some positive, buzz regarding or surrounding his maybe pass catching / pass protection, right? Because that was maybe the one knock that we had, not necessarily pass protection, but pass catching specifically, was that he just didn't do that in college. So if he does that in the NFL, that'll be a surprise. I think it remains to be seen, sure, but that's not necessarily what Zach Charbonnet was doing for you either. Zach Charbonnet was a goal line guy or a short yardage guy, kind of a bruiser type running back. So we'll see. Anyways, that's the news as it stands, week 8 away from the NFL season opener, and we still got a lot to cover with the AFC South. So might as well get right into it. But that was the news. So I'm gonna close this, close that. And why not start off with the Colts? For a couple of reasons. I think the most relevant reason is I think they won that division last year. So that's a good enough reason to start for me. But another good reason is that they have the highest, in this division, the highest drafted player of all of the teams is clearly Jonathan Taylor. So we might as well start with him too. So we'll talk about Jonathan Taylor. Balled out last year, 323 carries, almost 1,600 rushing yards.
History tells us that
touchdowns. Whoa. Pump the brakes. I don't know. Is that Mike? Who's that? Anyways, almost 1,600 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns, averaged 4.9 yards per carry, which was 10th most. But also, when you're talking about that type of volume, I would put him probably in like the top 3, top 4 of players who, I mean, like, I don't even think that many players even got to 300 carries. Let's take a look. Running backs. Apply filters. Attempts. So let's see. Out of the 4 players that hit over 300 carries, Derrick Henry, James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, and Jonathan Taylor, right? Well, I guess he was actually 3rd with his average. Damn, James Cook averaged 5.2, and same with Derrick Henry. That is wild. Okay, I mean, not too bad, not too bad. Christian McCaffrey, on the other hand, averaged a modest 3.9, right? So that's not nearly as good, but obviously it wasn't really his strong suit. He only finished with 1,200 rushing yards, despite having 311 carries. It was really his receptions that blew everybody else out of the water in this range, right? He had 102 receptions when everybody else, the next closest was Jonathan Taylor, at least in this 300 plus carry range, with 46 catches, right? So obviously that's where CMC shines. Nobody's surprised about that. We're fine. But again, the point I'm making here is that, at least the point I was trying to make, was that Jonathan Taylor was rather efficient despite having over 300 plus carries. However, there were 2 other players who outdid him in the efficiency that also got more than 300 carries, and those guys were James Cook and Derrick Henry. Now, this year, we all know I'm pretty high on James Cook, whereas Derrick Henry, I'm a little worried about him. But, hey, what's up, Nico Dobbs? How you doing, man? Happy Wednesday. I was about to say Friday, and man, it is definitely not Friday yet, boy. It's been a long week, I can tell you that much. But how you doing, man? Good to see you, man. Yeah, and I did set up. I forget if it was you or someone else who was asking about a paid league. So I set one up. I'll send the invites out, and I'll just start. Yeah, it does feel like a Friday though. It really does. I'll take it. But yeah, I'll start sending out invites and stuff over the course of today and probably Friday, and then leading up to the draft. Obviously, I think I'm gonna have that one draft like sometime first week of September or something like that. So similar to where our viewer league is going, but this will be called the $20 league. Here, I'll just pull it up right now. This one right here. I haven't invited anybody. It's just me so far. But yeah, how you doing though, Nico? Chilling, I hope. Had to crack a cold one. It's not alcoholic, don't worry. It's just a little spritz vibe, a little coffee spritz. Do you work from home? How come you were able to live so early from the West Coast? I do work from home, and I work East Coast hours. So that's what sometimes that actually does change. Like yesterday, for instance, I was working till like 5 or 6 p.m. West Coast. So by then I had already blown past my stream window. So I was like, I'll just push it to tomorrow. But yeah, I work East Coast hours remote. So I know, lucky me. Yeah, it's good for stuff like this, but it sucks when I like want to stay up and watch like a show or something like that. And it's like by 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I'm exhausted because I woke up at like 5 or 6 or some shit. So that's the only downside. But other than that, I can't complain. It's great. It's definitely great. But yeah, so like I said, I'll start sending out invites to this league. Actually, let me do this. I'm gonna test my chat. I have a chat plugin that I want to see if it works. So let me go ahead and drop this invite into the chat. See if that plugin worked. Nice, it did. Hell yeah! All right, dope. Well, hey, join up if you. And this is the $20 league, Nico. That I think again, I forget if it was you or someone else who asked me to make this, but feel free to join. This is our $20 league. So. Used to work with Europe, 6-hour difference. With East Coast, you worked 3 a.m. to 12. Damn. Yeah, that would have been brutal, bro. I mean, I don't know what I would have, if I've been able to last doing that. That's almost like graveyard shift. 3 a.m. is early, man. But, I mean, that does give you opportunities to kind of like have an actual day to spend doing stuff after 12, right? You clock out at 12. It's just like, hey, you got the whole day ahead of you pretty much until you got to go to sleep at like 5. But yeah. All right. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor, let's see where he's going in drafts. This is PPR ranking. So he's going down here at pick 10. We were actually talking about this with Zuthez, I believe last stream, where he's like, if I want a running back in this range, who am I going to go? And I don't think you really can reach for anyone else other than maybe James Cook. We did mention James Cook that day as well. Oh, you just joined? Hell yeah. 20. Hey, let's go. All right, cool, bro. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is, because I don't want to like be on the hook for managing money with, folks that respectfully, like I just have never met before. I'm doing League Safe. So I'm going to put my $20 on League Safe. We'll have a League Safe like account for everyone. And then that way, like when the time comes and people, either have to pay up or exit the league, then it's all handled by League Safe. I don't have to worry about it, and then payouts obviously handled by League Safe as well. So if you know what League Safe is, it's pretty handy. I just started looking at it, and yeah, I'm using it big time this year. So anyways, yeah, smart move. Yeah, figured it was just better safe than sorry, no pun intended. And it's a pretty cool service, so might as well use it. But anyways, my hot take was, and actually we'll put it up on the screen right now. Let's see if I can find it. All right, here we go. So this is my hot take. James Cook. So this is my prediction I made, I think like last week, that James Cook will finish above Jonathan Taylor in full PPR fantasy points by the end of the year. So James Cook is down here at pick 17. It's a crazy take. It is a crazy take, but I probably would pick up James Cook over Jonathan Taylor at the 10 here. But you probably could get both. You know what I'm saying? Like, you probably could get both of them if you pick up JT, and then, maybe 2 picks later, you end up with James Cook. Probably not what I would do, because I don't think I would go RB back to back like that. But not necessarily a bad thing if you believe in both those guys. Are we going to be able to get 12 people? I could find some people. I'm not worried about it. I think 12 is about the perfect size for a league. Like, I don't know if I want to do 10. We could. Like, if we only ended up with 10 and it's like I can't find 2 additional people, we'll go ahead and start with 10. But I think we can find 12, right? I think we can do it. So might as well start with 12 slots, and then if we need to sort of scale back, we can do that. But anyways, Jonathan Taylor, despite him being 27 years old, despite him having an amazing year last year, what did he finish as? The RB, I want to say RB2? No, he finished as RB4. So behind Bijan, behind Jahmyr Gibbs, and obviously CMC was number 1. And there was obviously a pretty big gap between number 1 and number 2. And then everybody else was pretty close together. And then there's another big gap after number 4. So clearly JT is in that like upper echelon of guys. And this is with Danny Dimes going out, I want to say like pretty early in the year. So let's take a look at what Danny Dimes did last year. Maybe not pretty early, but like definitely during a significant time frame where you were hoping that, guys on this team would be relevant. And once Danny Dimes went down, the only guy that was relevant still was actually Jonathan Taylor. Everybody else fell off a cliff. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, frickin' Tyler Warren fell off a cliff, right? Once it was Phillip Rivers, because no disrespect to Phillip Rivers, but like, he is a grandpa that was literally coming off of his couch to play football. So, he did well despite that. I think he won a few games, but, it wasn't good for fantasy. And so when Danny Dimes comes back, let's see, how much time did he miss? He went out, it looks like 12-7. So that's December. That'll be, by the time the season starts, that'll have been about 9 months. Let's actually take a look at Danny Dimes' health. Daniel Jones' health. All right, let's see what Google AI says. Daniel Jones is currently recovering from a torn Achilles, but has been fully cleared to participate in all activities. Damn, bro. So what the hell is going on? It's like him and Kittle are like recovering hella fast from these Achilles. I don't know what's going on. They're going to the same doctor, who they're going to, but like, I feel like the recovery time is just shrinking and shrinking. Players are coming back faster and faster. And I guess that's good, right? Medicine is clearly advancing to the point where like we can have these shorter recovery times, but that's pretty crazy, to be honest. All right, Nico saying, here's my strategy for this year's fantasy football draft. Round 1 through 3 RBs, because not that many options available. Round 4 and 5 wide receivers, then tight end round 6, RB or wide receiver round 7, QB round 8, second tight end round 9, and second QB round 10, like Patrick Mahomes or something like that. That is true. That is kind of crazy. Listen, 2 tight ends before round 10 or by round 10 is kind of crazy to me. I'm the tight end avoidance guy. Like I avoid tight ends like the plague, which is odd because I ended up finishing in my main league with 4 tight ends. But the only reason why that was the case was because people were just dropping good tight ends. And I was like, dude, you just drop that guy? Like, all right, I'll pick him up. You know what I mean? So I ended up with 4 tight ends on my team, but only because people get impatient and they'll drop big name guys. They'll drop guys like Mark Andrews. They drop guys like Travis Kelce, even though I think he was hurt last year, or just wasn't panning out, because then Patrick Mahomes got hurt, and that was obviously not a good situation. But like, tight ends are an interesting position because the range between sort of like, I guess, the top tier guys and then the bottom, like the serviceable streaming type quarterback tight ends it's not like the gap is that big, right? It's not necessarily like the gap is that big. And so sure, there are people who you could make the argument that like are worth getting that high, like the Brock Bowers, Trey McBrides. Like those are the guys you can kind of like set and forget. Whereas the rest of the field, right, are essentially, unless you get lucky with like one guy who kind of like pops off and stays consistent for a little bit, like Tyler Warren was that guy for a little bit. I want to say Tucker Kraft was also that guy for a little bit before he got hurt. Maybe AJ Barner had some decent games. But my point being is that unless you get lucky with those guys, yeah, Brenton Strange is also a good name. And Isaiah Likely now he's with, where is Isaiah Likely? I know he changed teams. I think he's on the Giants now. Yeah, he's on the Giants. Okay, so that could be a sneaky, like late round flyer, right? That you end up getting lucky on if he fits with this system and gels with this QB and they develop some chemistry, right? Because Jackson Dart is definitely a guy who will force feed targets to somebody if he likes you, right? I do believe that. So there is a chance that happens with Likely. But at the same time, he's someone who, sure, it's a coin flip. Maybe it's a little less than a coin flip. It's probably like 30% chance that he actually becomes somebody. But there's also like a 50% chance that guys you're drafting in like the 5th round don't become anybody, right? Or just inconsistent and not worth where you pick them up at. You'd rather use that pick on like, either a stud quarterback, which I wouldn't be mad at, right? Like Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, someone in that range, or you pick up another wide receiver or a running back or something like that, because there's still a ton of value to be had at those positions in this range, right? We're talking about Kyron Williams. We're talking about Josh Jacobs, right? Luther Burden, who we said we kind of like. DJ Moore down here, Mike Evans, Jameson Williams. So instead of going like a Colson Loveland, or I think, let's see, you mentioned your first tight end in round 6. So let's go down here to round 6. So round 6, you're realistically looking at a Tyler Warren or a Tucker Kraft, pretty much. Those are the guys that are in that range. So, both solid dudes for sure. But you're giving up the opportunity to pick up guys like, again, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow's going up here. Those are quarterbacks. Wide receivers we're talking about that I would probably target over those two running backs. Actually, not a lot of wide receivers down here in this range. Running backs, though, Travion Henderson for sure at 1. David Montgomery is someone who I wouldn't be mad at, especially if I needed like a plug-and-play guy right away. And then that's probably it. Unless it's those guys, I wouldn't be mad at taking like a Tyler Warren or a Tucker Kraft. Probably would lean Tyler Warren over that, right? Are you in favor of handcuffs? Like picking up Bucky with Gainwell or RJ Harvey with J.K. Dobbins? I think it depends on the handcuff. There are some situations where I just don't want either guys because it's that nebulous, right? Like, sure, you pick up both of them, and yeah, one of them is supposed to be someone. But like, for instance, with the RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins situation, actually, that one's maybe a little less nebulous because I know J.K. Dobbins like got hurt last year, even though he was doing really well. And then RJ Harvey came in, did pretty solid considering like he, I think, was a rookie last year, right? And so let's actually look up where Harvey is going. So RJ Harvey's going down here, RB32. Let's look at his game logs. Yeah, so after J.K. Dobbins went down, he had the role basically all to himself. This was after the bye and did great. And so even if J.K. Dobbins somehow decides to be, he's going down here. So even if J.K. Dobbins somehow like ends up being remotely similar to what he was like last year, I think I'm just avoiding that handcuff completely because I don't believe in Dobbins. I would probably just get RJ Harvey in that situation. And even if JK is like maybe the guy for a little bit at the beginning of the year, eventually I know RJ Harvey is probably going to take that backfield over, even with Sean Payton as the coach, who likes to do sort of like a running back by committee, ride the hot hand. Sure, I know he likes JK, but I know he likes RJ Harvey too. So J.K. Dobbins is 27 years old. He's coming off of a injury. What was this injury? A foot injury. Okay, so at least it wasn't like something that required surgery or anything like that, at least from what I can understand here. But the point being, even with sort of the full workload, J.K. Dobbins never really hit the ceiling that R.J. Harvey hit. Like, let's look at R.J. Harvey's stats one more time. J.K. Dobbins' best finish last year was like barely 16 points. R.J. Harvey had 7 games over 16 points, whiwhich was J.K. Dobbins' ceiling, right? And R.J. Harvey blew that out of the water like 5-6 different times. So, I just, that's a situation where I would avoid both of them. I would avoid trying to stash both of them. I would only get one, and the one I would pick is R.J. Harvey in this scenario, right? But that's a good question, though. Do you prefer picking players from many different teams to avoid conflicting buys? I think the whole buy situation gets people a little too in their head about things. I would try to just draft the guys I know I believe in, as opposed to worrying about sort of the buy-apocalypse situation. Because frankly, okay, if there is 1 week where 7 of my guys are on buy, you know what I'm saying? But those 7 guys are all studs that I know I can rely on every single other week, right? They're basically starter caliber dudes each and every week. Then I'm willing to eat that 1 week buy-apocalypse, so to speak, to just have guys I know I can rely on the rest of the way. So I guess a good example of that would be if there were 2 wide receivers I was looking at in a draft in a similar range, and one of those wide receivers had the same buy as 3 of my other wide receivers or something like that, right? And I was like, I could lean this other guy because, I'd have buy protection. And unless there was a really small discrepancy in their skill or their upside, sure, I maybe could make that justification of going the guy who doesn't have the same buy as the rest of my squad, right? That said, if there's not that necessarily a big of a discrepancy, or rather, sorry, there is a bigger discrepancy there with who I believe in, then I would much rather go with the guy I believe in more, despite him having the same buy as 5 other guys on my squad, than to go with a sort of a buy priority and go with the other player that I don't necessarily believe in as much. So that's my strategy. I'm comfortable with sort of trolling the waiver wire and trying to pick up a couple flyers or a couple plug and play guys or something like that in a desperation play to maybe pick up a win in a tough buy situation. But Nico's saying you'd rather lose 1 week potentially and win the rest of the time. Pretty much. Exactly. It's a calculation that you're making. So it's not really something I would factor in too much. Like I said, I don't even really pay attention to the buys as much. Some people do, but I think when you do that, you kind of get into your head a little too much. At least maybe I have done that in the past, where I maybe passed up on a guy that I really did like, but because I was fuck, my bye week 7 is going to be crazy because I have all the guys, unless it's with a position like your quarterback or your tight end, and you're strictly you're strictly drafting that quarterback to back up your starter, then they can't have the same bye. Right? And same with the tight end, but running backs, wide receivers, for the most part, even if 5 of them are on bye, I mean, that's obviously an extreme scenario. I don't think that's likely, but I would not I would be less inclined to worry about those players or those positions in bye weeks than I would be with quarterbacks or tight ends for that matter, because again, those are essentially the only reason why you're getting that backup is to fill in for that quarterback or tight end when it's a bye week. Right? So that's the one thing. Do you believe in DJ Moore with the Bills despite Josh Allen despite Josh Allen not throwing deep passes? Could it hurt Moore's value? I'm not going to say it hurts Moore's value, because what we saw last from DJ Moore was not his maximum potential, right? The Bears just underutilized him for whatever reason. I don't know if they just didn't like him, if it was a bad culture fit. Maybe there's something going on with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore. Who knows? But his target share was up and down the entire year, and it was a significant drop off with targets from the previous 2 seasons, previous 6 seasons basically. He had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight seasons with 118 plus targets until last year when he had only 85. So, and he played all 17 games. So again, like, I don't know what the hell was going on with Caleb Williams or the coaching staff and DJ Moore or whatever the hell, but like, maybe they wanted to get their young guys like Odunze and like Luther Burden and Colson Loveland going. Like, I don't really know the story, but clearly they had to get, something figured out, or they had to part ways in order to really, maximize, I guess, every bit of this situation, because clearly DJ Moore, his talent was being wasted there. So might as well get something for him and let him go flourish somewhere else. And when it comes to Josh Allen, so yes, DJ Moore is someone who's a deep threat, but also can really run any route. Like, DJ Moore is someone who I think is underrated when we talk about like his talent level, right? Because like every time we look at DJ Moore, at least I guess from a more recent perspective, we think about these sort of last couple years where, maybe he had a down year, but then he actually had some like good years in Chicago, right? But then down year again here in Carolina. So that was his last year in Carolina. So it was interesting to see sort of these big spike years. Even though he's playing all 17 games, something happens before he ends up leaving a team where maybe target share dips a little bit or efficiency dips or something like that. But either way, he's someone we've seen finish top 6, top 16. He's a clear wide receiver, sort of fringe wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 player. If he can be consistent. And so Josh Allen, we've seen with guys like Stephon Diggs, and I want to say even there was like a period of time where Gabe Davis was having some success with down the field shots. Even Shakir had some moments where he was getting some good down the field looks from Josh Allen. So it doesn't necessarily have to happen a ton, but at least it has to happen at all. And I think DJ Moore is someone who will make it known that, like, he's age 29, sure, but I think he's still got the speed. He'll make it known that he can still burn your best corner, right? Like, I think they're going to make that pretty clear from day one. Like, I don't necessarily look at this offense, right, and think they're going to play conservatively, especially with the absence now of Sean McDermott. They have to make sure that they show people around the NFL, like, hey, we're a viable team. Like, our Super Bowl window is still wide open. Like, we got Josh Allen, we got James Cook, we just made this acquisition for DJ Moore. Like, we're pushing in the right direction. And I don't think you can do that by playing like conservatively, at least at the beginning of the year, right? So I think DJ Moore, and this is pure speculation, right? Like, we haven't even gone through, or I guess we did look at their depth chart, but there's nobody else there. Like, pass catching wise, it's just DJ Moore. Like, unless you believe in Shakir. And, I forget who else they have on their team at this point, but it's not looking good. Who are your red flags for next fantasy draft? For me, any Giants player. Cam Scatterwood, dumb backflip. Yeah, true. Malik Neighbors. Yep. Browns players except Fannin. Jets players, not even Gary Dubs or Breece Hall. Yeah, there are several situations like that. And, I think I mentioned this maybe last week. I'm compiling my red flag list as we go along, like as we look through these depth charts. Like right now, my red flag list on this team, it's everybody except for Jonathan Taylor, right? So similar to your Giants situation or maybe your Browns situation where you'd only really want one guy on that team, Jonathan Taylor is the only guy I would want on the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe Tyler Warren, but depending on like how healthy Daniel Jones looks, which I think we just looked at it, he should be good to go to start the year. Then, maybe you could look at guys like Alec Pierce potentially, but, I just, all these dudes here, especially with the absence of Michael Pittman Jr., it's just going to be a crapshoot of who's going to be the guy to want each and every week. If Alec Pierce is healthy, and we'll take a look at his health actually right now, then it's probably Alec Pierce out of those three receivers. But other than that, I'm probably waiting to take Tyler Warren. If he slips a little bit, I'd probably pick him up. But I'm just worried about all these guys, right? All these pass catchers. So who am I looking at? Alec Pierce. Let's look at his news. Alec Pierce, among top 5 underpriced wide receivers, mid-round sleepers, deep threat. Where's Alec Pierce going? Okay. Let's see health. Alec Pierce is not fully healthy and is currently recovering from left ankle surgery he underwent in March. He has been given a 4 to 6 month recovery timeline and is expected to miss early training camp and preseason practices, though he is targeting a return before the regular season. Okay, so he's clearly rehabbing right now. It looks like he's going to miss a lot of the preseason and training camp. So, but he is, I think like a 4th or 5th year player at this point. So, it's not necessarily like required for him to be present for all that stuff. And I'm sure he'll still be like at the building, there in sort of spirit, but actually physically participating with, the coaching staff or maybe some of his other team members or teammates or whatever, right? Between drills and whatnot. So, he's going to clearly get there. He's going to get back on the field as soon as he can, but it looks like that won't be until late in the preseason, maybe a couple weeks before the season actually starts. So, theoretically, week 1, week 2, he's still kind of getting his, up to speed. He's still getting his legs under him, and we may see just a bit of a slow start from him, especially because like an ankle is something that's hard to trust. Like a lot of lower body injuries, extremity, like, knees, ankles, calves, feet, those things can take some time to really become trustworthy again. Like maybe they are technically cleared to practice fully and they medically are good to go, but mentally the player themselves might feel a little hesitant to cut as hard as they normally would on that ankle, or jump off the line of scrimmage as quickly as they normally would, right? They just aren't running the routes the same. So who knows how long it takes for Alec Pierce, because last year, let's give him some credit, he started popping off, and I think this was probably his best year before he went down. This was his best year to date. So let's see where he finished. So he had some pretty solid games. It took a little bit of time for him to come online, but once he did come online in week 7, he started getting a significant uptick in targets, and his yardage was pretty steady for at least up until almost the end of the year. Now, of course, he had some down games as well in the stretch. There were some games here where he had no points. That was actually in the fantasy championship, so that was probably pretty tough if you were hoping on Alec Pierce to help carry you to a championship. But if you started him in week 17 and it was Phillip Rivers as the quarterback, you were taking a very hard dice roll there anyways. So you can't be too mad when he ended up goosing for you. And you probably should have tried to find a better option anyways, right? Even though he did have a pretty solid game the week before. So it's hard to chase points when you see a guy like this who Alec Pierce relies on downfield targets mostly. You can see here where his yards per reception consistently above 16 yards per reception, right? So that's clearly a downfield target, downfield threat type of guy. So we did see him have some success though without Danny Dimes. So I think, but again, his most consistent stretch was where Danny Dimes was the quarterback. So all that to say, Alec Pierce is going down here in round 8, round 7, right? Wide receiver 33. He has never finished above wide receiver 28, which again was where he finished last year. And now he's going as wide receiver 33. I think that's right around where he should go. But again, if I'm looking at guys in this range and I'm like, dude, wouldn't I rather have like a Jadarian Price? Like Jadarian Price is going down here. That's crazy. I think he's actually even slid further, or maybe we were looking at other rankings, so that's why he was a little bit higher. But this is full PPR rankings, so it makes sense that he'd be going down here. But I mean, Brian Thomas Jr., I'd rather take another shot on him than Alec Pierce, to be honest, right? Maybe when you get a little further down here, then it's like, okay, probably take Alec Pierce. But even RJ Harvey, who's going all the way down here, pick 88, RB 32. Like, I'd pick him up over Alec Pierce, because I probably, again, with the way I draft, I'm picking up like 3 stud wide receivers before I get out of round 6. right? I have to have at least 3 guys that I know I can start and count on every single week before I get out of round 6. There's no way I'm leaving the 6th round without that 3rd wide receiver if I haven't picked him up earlier than that, right? So, but again, I would take a shot on Brian Thomas Jr. over Alec Pierce. Brian Thomas Jr. is someone we've seen be a top 5 caliber player. He finishes wide receiver 4 his rookie year. Big down year last year. He missed some time. He was struggling despite missing time, right? But the talent's still there, right? Am I going to believe he's going to turn into like Kevin White or somebody like that? Like who's a player who had like a great rookie year and then just never quite could get back to that status? Like I'm trying to think, but you know there are some guys, of course, but I don't think that's necessarily the fate for Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. So that's my take on Alec Pierce. I'm avoiding him. Excuse me. Oops. And before we move on from the Colts, I think the biggest name, we kind of covered Danny Dimes. I'm avoiding him as well. Jonathan Taylor, I said I'd be happy to pick him up, but again, I'm higher on James Cook, as crazy as that sounds. I'm avoiding all other pass catchers aside from maybe Tyler Warren. Like I said, I'm not picking up Alec Pierce, but let's look at Tyler Warren's stats just to kind of like see where he's going and if it's worth it. So he's going as tight end 4 right now. We know Danny Dimes is going to be back, and that when Danny Dimes was the quarterback here, that was when Tyler Warren was having his most success, right? Once Danny Dimes went down, I think it was week 13, that was when Tyler Warren fell off a cliff production-wise, and the big reason was because he just wasn't getting looks from
I want to be back and glad we got it.
Damn.
I want to be back and
oh, come on, Danny Dimes.
I want to be back.
Nope. Game log.
I want to be
back. You going to be back again? Okay. So it looks like 12-7. He went out 12-7. What game was that? Anyways, maybe I need to look here. Danny Dimes played till week 14. Okay, so yeah, literally week 14 was when he went down, and that was, again, right where Tyler Warren's literally 1-for-1, or like direct correlation, that was where Tyler Warren's fantasy production fell off a cliff. So with Danny Dimes back, do you believe in Danny Dimes coming back now? I'm coming back, man. I'm coming back. We heard it too many times, and I believe that he'll be back. I know he'll be back, but will he be like good enough when he does come back to at least be like not necessarily a viable fantasy quarterback? It's not like you're going to pick him up to be your quarterback, but I think the biggest takeaway is, do we expect him to at least be viable when it comes to sustaining other fantasy assets, right? Like a Tyler Warren, or, you know, JT will be fine. I'm not worried about him, but definitely like an Alec Pierce, or even any of the other pass catchers, like I said, that I'm avoiding, but that maybe that could end up being guys, you know, off the waiver wire that you end up playing, who potentially do stuff for you like one random week, right? Like I don't think any of these guys are going to be super consistent outside of Tyler Warren, and then maybe Alec Pierce once he gets his legs back under him, right? But these are awesome totals here. I mean, came out of the gate swinging, right? 9 targets, 7 receptions, 76 yards, and just like consistently getting these targets. It's just beautiful to see this, and it's pretty efficient as well. And not to mention his yards after the catch, like some of these games where he's like popping off for 79 yards on 4 catches, he's got a 19.8 yards per reception rate. So one of those, or maybe a couple of those, were either downfield throws, or they just, you know, were yards after the catch. He just broke a tackle and took off, right? So what I will do, which we rarely do, but this is something that a bit of a special occasion, we're going to look at Tyler Warren's rookie highlights, because I do want to see the sort of, I guess, eye test of, do we think Tyler Warren is this good? Like, I know he's this good. I guess it helps to remind ourselves sometimes. But let's just watch a couple of Tyler Warren highlights and see what happens. So this is a little screen. Gets a nice 10-yard chunk right there. Danny Dimes rolls out, easy bootleg, play action, tight end, wide open in the end zone. Tyler Warren, touchdown, baby. Another downfield throw. So we're seeing already some good down the field passes to Tyler Warren. Nice little over the shoulder. Tracked the ball well. This one breaks a tackle and then just yaks for another 10 yards. Sends it. Nice little out and up. Touchdown, baby. So the good thing that you like, what you like to see, what we're seeing in this tape, 3rd and 4 right here. Key scenario. They're down by 3 in the second quarter, sure, but like they go to their guy they can trust. He's reliable. 1st and goal, they draw up a nice little in route. Boom, wide open. I don't know where the defender was there, but he was just completely wide open. So, little pitch toss, little tight end pitch. He looks like McBride. That guy looks so imposing on the defender. For sure. I mean, he's huge. Dude, look at this guy. He's fucking a monster, dude. 3 dudes took him down there. He had 3 dudes that have to tackle him. And he looks quick, too. Boom. Bounces off a guy right there. That guy didn't even wrap up, but to be fair, Tyler Warren lowered his shoulder. Boom. Laid the hammer down. So you're right. He does kind of give you a McBride vibe. I would even say kind of like a baby Gronk, which I forget who actually was quote unquote baby Gronk, but this guy is giving me Gronkowski vibes for sure. Absorbs the contact, holds onto the ball. So again, like I broke my tight end rule last year when I drafted this guy. Not only was he a rookie, but he was also, I think I picked him up in like the 5th round or something like that. He was going pretty high. So that is not what I normally do. But for whatever reason, I think it was because I like believed in the college tape. We were on stream last year watching his film, and I literally said to myself, I was like, I think I'm convincing myself to pick up a tight end for the first time ever in like the 4th or 5th round. And sure enough, I did it, and I was happy I did because, like, as you can see, big part of this offense and was clearly a stud. He was, I want to say, like a top 2 or top 3 tight end for much of the year until Danny Dimes went down, right? And he still finished as a tight end 4. So, pretty solid, man. Pretty solid. Can't really be mad at that type of talent and that the role that he has in this offense. But the risk here, and it sucks to kind of project these types of scenarios, but we have to understand, like, there is risk here regardless of picking up a tight end. Well, really, any player that you pick up anywhere in the draft is going to feel like a quote-unquote risk. But this specifically, you need to have this guy ball out for you. Like, I think if anything were to happen to Danny Dimes, or Danny Dimes is just, like, ass, then clearly this guy's not going to be worth his pick. So if we get closer to this season, maybe in preseason, we see Danny Dimes in a preseason game during the first, drive of the game when the starters are out there, and he does like a couple, quick passes or whatever, and then also gets like a scramble and gets away from some pressure, delivers a pass, and or gets a designed run play where he clearly still has sort of that quickness and that mobility, then I think that would do a lot for my nerves when we're talking about really any of these pass catchers, but specifically Tyler Warren. So, yeah, not because I share a name with this guy, but I do love this guy, and I will say he's the one tight end I would probably break my tight end rule for. Again, if all the arrows are pointing up and Danny Dimes looks healthy and I'm not worried about that, I probably would be happy to pick up a guy like Tyler Warren. But that's like, again, that's the one exception to my tight end rule. But yeah, Tyler Warren goes round 6 now, 1 round later, despite his crazy rookie year. It doesn't make sense now. I think it's the Danny Dimes factor. I really do. Like, you're right. He's going in round 6. But I truly think it's just, not to mention there are so many big names around here. You know, like Jamison Williams, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Javonte Williams, Luther Burden, Josh Jacobs, like all these guys that people are really high on that are above him. So it makes me not like so concerned that Tyler Warren's going down here in the 6th, despite his amazing year last year. But again, I think part of that is just, is Danny Dimes going to be healthy? Is this offense going to be viable? Is this offense going to utilize Tyler Warren the same way they did last year when they were, firing on all cylinders and were winning a bunch of games and their offense looked viable? Like, I don't know. We'll see. Probably if Danny, again, it all hinges on Daniel Jones, right? If he's healthy, and it's a heavy air quotation here, then I think Tyler Warren is someone you can trust. Yeah, I don't think you necessarily don't want to trust him. But here, let me put this back up. AFC South. Oh, wait. Divisional breakdowns. Let's get that back on screen. Cool. I mean, who would have imagined Danny Dimes balling this good? He was a dark horse overperforming so well early in the season. Yeah, with the whole way he exited New York, it was definitely like a surprise to see him do that last year. At least for, again, not like necessarily a fantasy perspective, but they were winning games. And he was viable from an NFL quarterback standpoint. And he was not losing them games. He only threw interceptions in 5 out of the 13 or 14 games that he played. So that's not bad. Even though he did throw 3 interceptions in the game against Pittsburgh and only threw 1 touchdown that game. I wonder if they won that. Let's see. Game log, Pittsburgh, they lost. So they lost by a touchdown that game. So yeah, you can't throw 3 interceptions and hope to win the game. So that was tough. But look, these are all W's over here, right? Their first 11 games or whatever, they went 9 for 2. So that's incredible. And again, yeah, you're right. Nobody really expected Daniel Jones to do this, especially in a new team, especially with, maybe not necessarily like the best passing attack around him, even though Alec Pierce is serviceable and Michael Pittman is definitely, I think, not necessarily like a tight, an elite wide receiver, but still pretty solid. And then they do have an elite tight end at Tyler Warren, right? With Tyler Warren. So anyways, not to belabor the point here with Daniel Jones, but if he can get back to sort of this game manager, he's got pretty decent completion percentage here. He's taking care of the ball. He's not throwing interceptions. He's going, 3+ games without throwing any interceptions here. He doesn't have to throw a ton of touchdowns, but as long as he's getting their team in scoring position, then like they're going to win some games. And this division, the AFC South, there's only like one team I'm really scared about defensively, and that is the Houston Texans, which we will get to later on. But other than that, they have some pretty soft matchups in this division, in my opinion, right? The Jags could sort of surprise some people, and I'm not sure what the Tennessee Titans are going to look like. I think they're still probably working, to get back up to sort of like a decent NFL team status, but, because last year obviously was pretty bad and the year before as well. But, yeah. So, anyways, just to wrap up the
I want to be back.
The Colts here. All right, Danny Dimes. The Colts here. Let me get out of here. Daniel Jones, not necessarily targeting him for fantasy purposes. Oh, shit. Nico Dobbs asking, are the breakfast burritos back next season? I was so hyped for you when Matty Boots lost and brought the good stuff to you. Yeah, we will be doing the breakfast burrito bets 100% this year again. And, I think Matt maybe won like 1 or 2 of those, and I definitely took like 5 or something like that. I lost track, but this year maybe they'll be a little more even. Maybe Matt will have the advantage. Who knows? But I think the key there is to just like target players Matt likes. that he is just a little too hopeful for, and then give him like an offer he can't refuse, pretty much. And it just like it works every time. So Matty Boots, Matty Football, if you're watching this, now you know my secret of how I'm winning those burrito bets against you. So who knows? Maybe you'll start using my tactic against me. But all right. Moving on to the Tennessee Titans, who last year, I think they finished with, let's see, what was their schedule last year, or their record last year? Why am I not seeing here? Let's go to stats, or just home. Full standings. Let's go to 2025. Okay, so the Tennessee Titans finished 3-14, bottom of the NFL, tied for worst with the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Jets. And they decided to do some cool offseason moves. I never say no to food. That's my sweet spot. Hell yeah, bro. Sustenance. You know what I'm saying? You gotta stay fed, gotta stay nourished, especially on game day, you know? But all right, let's see what transactions they made during the offseason. So back here in, let's see, May, how come it's not going to show us the draft? I think that's really what I want to see, is who they drafted. Okay, so NFC, let's see. Titans draft picks. So they picked up Carnell Tate, which is that wide receiver from Ohio State. Man, I don't think I want to draft any Titans players. You know, that's what it looks like. I might change your mind on that right now, because surprisingly, there are a couple Titans players that I would be interested in drafting, because just value, right? And doesn't necessarily mean that I believe in the Titans themselves, but there are instances where players on bad teams can be good for fantasy. And I'm trying to think of a good scenario. I guess, again, I keep going back to the most obvious example, which was Saquon Barkley in his rookie year, where the Giants went 5-12, but Saquon finished as like the running back 1 or 2 or something like that, right? Like he had an incredible year, despite the Giants being complete and utter doo-doo. So I don't necessarily think that that's the Titans this year, right? And sure, there are a bunch of talent concerns, especially when it comes to the backfield. But when it comes to the actual other guys that I'm looking at on this team that I do want to target, little foreshadowing, I actually like where they're going in drafts. So first and foremost, the guy that I want to bring up, Cam Ward, right? Okay. Last year, he was the number 1 pick overall in the NFL draft, and then just completely underperformed. But it wasn't all his fault, right? Cam Ward had a tough situation going for him. I want to say the offensive line in Tennessee was probably bottom 3, bottom 4. I can say that without even having to look it up. I'm almost certain of it, right? Let's see how many sacks he took. He took 55 sacks. He took 55 sacks. That's an average of, let's divide 55 by 17. 55 divided by 17. That's 3.2 sacks per game, right? So over 3 sacks a game, that's not good, right? So your offensive line is clearly problematic. Tony Pollard, Cam Ward, that can't be right. Enlighten me, please. Oh, yeah, I'm telling you right now, man. Watch. So Cam Ward is someone who was drafted, again, the 1-1. The reason why, he was good in college. He was incredible in college. We watched his tape. I was like, man, if this guy just gets a decent scenario, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts balling out of control. In fact, I drafted him as a flyer, as like my backup quarterback, right? Who was sort of this guy who I was hoping would come online at some point during the year. Never quite panned out. But I think the encouraging thing is, and let's look at his stats. So, Cam Ward. Last year, I mean, it was bad. Just, I get it, all right? He had one game where he actually had 20 points. But down the stretch, 15, 18, 17 fantasy points. viable, right? Not too bad. He's throwing 29 times, only completing 18 though for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is the encouraging thing that I want us to pay attention to right now, right? Between week 11 and week 18, he only threw 1 interception while he threw for 10 touchdowns. So that's a 10-to-1 ratio for the last 11 games of the year where he was throwing not necessarily effectively for his sort of completion percentage and or totals, but he was getting touchdowns and he was not throwing interceptions. He was keeping the ball safe, which is about all you can ask for from a rookie, right? Cam Ward should have gone to the Lions to replace Jared Goff. Ooh, interesting. That's a hot take. And you know what? If he had gone to the Lions, now I don't know how the Lions would have picked him up because Cam Ward was like the number 1 guy off the board again. So the Lions would have had to trade up to get him. That said, I do like that hypothetical. If somehow the Lions miraculously did get Cam Ward and for whatever reason, didn't believe in Jared Goff anymore, maybe he was a part of that trade to trade up to get Cam Ward or something like that. I still think that, the Lions don't make the playoffs last year, clearly, right? So that is some interesting hypothetical. But the reason why I don't know how likely that would have been is because the Lions had no reason to believe that Jared Goff had nothing, didn't have it still, right? And I think Jared Goff still proved it last year that he still has it. So they were in win now mode, whereas Cam Ward is sort of like a guy that you need to essentially develop into a top caliber guy. Even though he was the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, but you still have to develop a talent, right? You still have to develop a guy like that, even though he had a lot of things going for him coming in. Again, I don't think the Lions just plug him in and all of a sudden are better than they were without Jared Goff, right? I don't think it would be better with Cam Ward than they were with Jared Goff, is what I'm saying. Right away, at least. So, but that's an interesting hypothetical, and we'll see if they decide to make moves for him. He could end up leaving Tennessee in a couple of years. That wouldn't surprise me. But again, the analysis here is Cam Ward is someone who didn't rush at all, even though that was a big part of his college game was rushing. So maybe that's something we see them let loose with now this year. So he is on my sort of list of guys to take a shot on late in drafts. He's going literally down here behind guys like, where the hell is he? Down here around guys like, if we're talking about quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, who else is going around here? Sam Darnold, which is kind of wild that Sam Darnold's going down here, but I guess he's not really fantasy viable. And Malik Willis. So again, you're getting him for free, right? So out of all these guys, if I'm going to take a chance on one of these guys to be sort of a random breakout, maybe not necessarily winning NFL games, but fantasy viable, right? Just high fantasy output, despite maybe being in garbage time scenarios, right? Maybe because they're in garbage time scenarios. Cam Ward definitely is someone who I wouldn't be mad at picking up at the back of drafts just to be like, hey, I believe in the talent. Second year, let's go. Hopefully he can turn it around, right? Again, the last 10 games of last year, he only threw 1 interception while throwing 10 touchdowns. So that was encouraging, right? I think I would still draft Brissett or Mayfield over Purdy, or Purdy over Cam Ward. I might even consider Kyler Murray, which I don't believe in. Yeah, I mean, all those guys are proven, right? So all of those dudes, I'm even Brissett, right, is quote unquote proven compared to a guy like Cam Ward. And so you'll see all of those guys, actually, except Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is going lower than Cam Ward. But let's see where Mayfield is going. So Baker Mayfield's going up here, QB 19, probably 3 or 4 rounds above where Cam Ward is going. And then Purdy is going even higher, QB 12. So about 6 rounds ahead of where you would probably have picked up Cam Ward. So definitely, obviously, Brock Purdy is a guy that you're trusting over pretty much any of those other dudes. But, hey, what's up, Walt Grizzly? You take Ward over Brissett and Mayfield? Interesting. So, I kind of like that, actually, because Mayfield, you're picking up right here in round 11, 12, right? So that's not necessarily high, but like he's essentially like a middle of the road backup quarterback for you. And sure, we've seen him finish as, last year he finished as a top 12 quarterback. The year before he was the number 4 quarterback. The year before he was the number 10. So all 3 years on Tampa Bay, he has finished as a top 12 quarterback. So quarterback 1, right? But no more Mike Evans. I don't know what the offense is going to look like with Igbuka as the number 1. I mean, Igbuka is a stud, so don't necessarily like hear what I'm not saying. But will Baker Mayfield be as good or as consistent, even though last year he was pretty inconsistent, even though he finished as a top 12 QB? There were some weeks where you probably started him through this stretch here. Maybe you benched him for Los Angeles Rams, but like Arizona, you started him. New Orleans, you fired him up. And you were probably disappointed with this output here, right? Back-to-back sub 15-point games in scenarios where these are like good matchups for him. And he underperformed. So, and it's not even like he even threw like not a ton of times. He threw 30 times in this game, only completed 14 passes against New Orleans for only 122 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Right? He salvaged a little bit of his fantasy output with 6 carries for 42 yards, but like still, that didn't feel great. So I think that's where people are giving him a little bit of a knock, is that he was not super consistent last year. And now he doesn't have Mike Evans anymore. So, are we worried about Baker Mayfield? I don't know. I'm kind of a little worried. I think he got paid though, didn't he? Didn't he get a contract this year? Baker balled without Mike Evans all year long until he got injured. He carried me with his consistency, almost as good as Jalen Hurts for my Superflex. Interesting. Yeah, no Evans and Igbuka really took a step back at the end of last year. Well, Igbuka was hobbled, I know that much. He was dealing with like a lingering hamstring. He never was quite the same after he got knocked out for some time, and then they kind of like rushed him back because maybe they needed to, like in their mind, they needed him back on the field like sooner rather than later. I really don't know why they did that. I think it would have been better for them to just like rest him for like 2 more weeks at least. But, I'm not a coach, so in the NFL. Jalen Hurts isn't even a real QB. I love that. Every time you say that, Walt, I'm like, you know what? It's so funny because it's like he's proving that narrative each and every year. Because you've been saying that even when Jalen Hurts was like a top 4 quarterback, you know what I mean, in fantasy. So it's like, you're clearly seeing something that not everybody else is seeing, because I believed in Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, and he actually did pretty well for me a couple times, but there was a year where he got injured like week 15 or something, and then even though I had like the best record in the league that year, because I couldn't find a backup quarterback for Jalen Hurts because I had basically like foregone that, I ended up fizzling out in the playoffs because like Jalen Hurts got hurt when it mattered most or whatever. So not necessarily like his performance was the reason there, but like, you gotta be available. And I didn't plan for him to not be available. So I was out on just Jalen Hurts since then. And, but to your point, let's take a look at least at what Jalen Hurts did last year, because it wasn't great. Let's see. He finishes QB 9. Which he's finished as a top 10 QB in all of the last 5 years. So that's pretty decent for fantasy purposes. But like, in the NFL, I mean, was this his Super Bowl season? He only threw 18 touchdowns in his Super Bowl winning year. That's kind of wild. But yeah. So I love that though, Walt, that you're just like consistently, Jalen Hurts isn't even a quarterback, dog. Like, look at these games, man. There's some games where he's like not scoring many points at all, but it's all really on the ground though. A lot of it is, at least these big games, it's just rushing touchdowns, So, anyways, even though he did throw for 39 fucking attempts this one game. I hate the fans, not the team, and I'm fine with other players. Just don't like Hurts. Nice. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Nice. All right, so again, this is my red pill on Cam Ward. Last year, we saw Cam Ward putting it together. And so where he's going in the back of drafts, I'm willing to take a shot on him, especially because we didn't even see what I think one of his biggest strengths could be, which is his rushing ability. And we saw it once. We saw it literally for one game last year where he ran 6 times for 37 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And that was his best game of the year. And it was against Seattle, of all teams, which is wild to think, right? So that was probably like some garbage time antics. But again, week 12. Let's see what week 12 was for the Tennessee Titans. Week 12 for the Tennessee Titans. Let's see. Standings. Nope. Home. I think it's got to be in scores. No. Maybe schedule. Nope. .2025 regular season. Oh, I'm not even looking at the fucking teams. That's why. Schedule last year. Okay. All right. So week 12, they lost 30-24. So that game was actually kind of close. Maybe it looked closer than it was because they scored late in the, so it was not very close. It was about, let's say it was 17-30 in the fourth quarter. And so they scored late and brought it up to a 1-score game. But again, they were not close to winning this game. That being said, that was garbage time heroics. Cam Ward probably rushed that touchdown in during garbage time. Let's take a look. Full play-by-play. Touchdown. So let's see. Cam Ward passed to Kamire DK for 1-yard touchdown. Okay, so that was his garbage time touchdown pass. So either way, garbage time touchdown right there. 43 seconds left in the fourth quarter. The game is completely out of reach. But Tennessee's still driving, and Seattle's like, fuck it, we'll give them a touchdown. We don't really. I mean, they probably didn't even want to give them the touchdown there, but that shows you sort of the tenacity of the Tennessee Titans against a substantially, more talented team, which was the Seattle Seahawks, and they scored down the stretch, and Cam Ward probably made a pretty solid play for that 1-yard touchdown pass. Right? So, again, am I saying go grab Cam Ward as your starting quarterback? No. But what I am saying is if you grab a guy in the first 5-6 rounds, obviously you have your Joe Burrows, you have your Josh Allens, you have your Jaden Daniels, right? If you get any of those sort of top caliber guys, Jalen Hurts, we just brought him up, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't really need another quarterback, but what if I just stash somebody on my bench as a backup guy who could potentially turn into a stud? Cam Ward is the top of my list in that respect for guys who are completely being sort of underdrafted or overlooked rather, and could finish well above their current draft position, which I think Cam Ward has. Absolutely, his ceiling is a top 12, top 10 quarterback for sure. Will he finish that? I don't know. Does he need to be worth picking up for me? Not even. I think as long as he finishes as a top 15 guy, then he was well worth that pickup for me, because I'm only probably going to need to start him a couple times out of the year, right? If that. So anyways, Titans are your underdog team this year. Nice, dude. I like that. I mean, going 3-14 last year definitely did not leave a good taste in a lot of people's mouths, but a lot of things I think are gonna be going well for them this year, as far as let's just say their schedule, right? So New York Jets, easy matchup week 1. Then it's versus Philly at week 2. Then it's at New York Giants, right? Another easy matchup. So I think they could literally win 2 out of those first 3 games those New York teams do not scare me. And then it's at Baltimore. It's a little bit of a tough matchup. Then it's home against Houston. Very tough. Then it's at Indianapolis. They could surprise people with that game. Then it's home against Cleveland. Let's fucking go. Then it's at Cincinnati. Sorry, but Bengals gonna win. But at least they might actually put up a fight because Bengals defense, we don't know what that's gonna look like this year. It's probably gonna be improved for sure, but maybe not as much as people expect. And then it's Jacksonville, which is a division game at home, and then at Dallas. Then it's at Jacksonville again, and then Washington, Detroit, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Houston. So I would say, like, dude, they could finish with like 6 wins this year. You know, doubling your total from last year. I think that's a win for them. So yeah, I would not be surprised if they shocked people this year. I'm not saying they're going to win the division or anything, but they're going to be a lot better than last year. Absolutely. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And just based off the schedule, I think they have a chance to win, like I said, like 6 games, right? Definitely against New York Jets. Maybe, you know, Giants could be a split. Maybe Cleveland, so I'll give them 2 for sure. And then, you know, maybe like they split one with the Colts. Vegas, they definitely take Vegas. And then they could beat Pittsburgh, right? So that's 5 wins right there if they don't split another game with like Jacksonville or something like that, right? So you think Jacksonville takes a step back? I can see that too. Yeah, and we'll cover the Jacksonville Jaguars in a sec once we finish with the Titans. But yeah, I'm with you, Walt. I actually do think the Titans are going to be a sneaky team this year. And again, just for fantasy, I think they could be like garbage time heroes, man. Straight up. So that's my take on Cam Ward. I like him as a stasher. Let's see Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard last year was decent, actually. 242 carries, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, averaged 4.5 yards per carry. Let's see what his fantasy finish was. He finished as RB22, so solid RB2. And, you know, it wasn't like super great. It was pretty up and down most of the year. There were some stretches where it was just pretty tough to even consider starting him. And, you know, maybe some of these were predictable because they were tough matchups, like Chargers, tough-ish matchup. Houston, obviously, that's a tough matchup. Seattle, definitely tough matchup. Jacksonville, that could have been just a fluke for him. He only got 10 carries that game. But then at Cleveland, big pop-off game, his best game of the year. And then followed that up with at San Francisco, 18 points with 14 carries and 104 yards and a touchdown. So there were some moments where he did hit some decent peak ceiling games, but it wasn't nearly as consistent as you'd like. And the stretches of bad were more significant than the stretches of good were. So more often than not, it was hard to trust this guy. And that was largely due to, I think, the fact that this team was just in negative game script after negative game script after negative game script. And, you know, for a team that, again, they lost 14 games last year, but that was largely due to rookie quarterback situation, like no pass catchers to speak of, but also their schedule was pretty tough, right? Like we're looking here at Denver week 1, fucking buzzsaw. Then it's Los Angeles Rams, another buzzsaw. Then it's Indianapolis Colts, who were actually performing better than we expected. And so, like, not necessarily a buzzsaw for the run game, but tough matchup for sure. And he's even getting like a bunch of carries in these games. His efficiency is just in the gutter, right? For most of this time here. So if I went into the year with Cam Ward as my starter, I wouldn't be mad, but I don't value QBs as much as fantasy. Interesting. I mean, dude, that would be bold. Especially if you're not in like a super deep league, like in a 16-team league, that I love that, right? In a 12-team or less, I think that is a little risky for sure, right? If you're waiting all the way until round 15 to pick up your starting quarterback, like sure, I mean, quarterbacks are not necessarily a dime a dozen, but they're much easier to stream than other positions. So Cam Ward as your starter isn't necessarily as like non-viable as maybe, you know, you doing that with like your running backs or wide receivers or some shit like that and focusing on other positions. But no, actually that kind of shows you maybe how much trust you can have in a guy like Cam Ward, because he could potentially be worth being your starter if you were picking up other value in other positions by foregoing quarterbacks earlier on. It's risky again, but like, you're savvy enough of a drafter that I think you could probably pull that off. So I actually do like that. I might even do that in one league this year, just as a fun little vibe. But Carnell Tate is going to be the best fantasy pick for the Titans. I could see that. And I actually want to get to his tape. So after we talk about Tony Pollard, we'll jump and watch his Carnell Tate's. Is it Carnell or Cornell? Carnell. We'll watch Carnell Tate's college tape. But yeah, so just to finish up on Tony Pollard, where he's going in drafts, which is, again, right here, RB28. He's going around guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle's going down here, RJ Harvey. I think personally, just for the consistency issues with Tony Pollard and that team, I know is probably going to struggle a little bit, especially being in a little bit of coming from behind, so negative game script scenarios, and with not a lot of dudes behind him, I guess he's not like super risky in terms of like, oh, is somebody going to come take his job? It's not like they just drafted a guy or anything like that. Like maybe Nicholas Singleton, who they did pick up this year in the 5th round, is potentially someone that you might want to look out for. But like, I'm not worried about Tyjae Spears, and like Michael Carter is listed 4th on the depth chart behind a rookie. So like, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a guy you worry about. But I think this run game is something that I'm kind of avoiding in general. If you want to go get Tony Pollard, if he slides a little bit past this point, sure. But again, I'm picking up guys like Ramondre over him. I'm picking up guys like Rico Dowdle, RJ Harvey over him. These are all guys I would probably, maybe not Rico Dowdle because I don't necessarily believe in the Steelers, but definitely would pick up RJ Harvey and maybe even, dare I say, like a Kenny G or a Kyle Monangai. But then actually you're getting into kind of the weeds down here. So sure, pick up Tony Pollard, but like, that's probably where I would draw the line, is right after RJ Harvey. Is the Titans defense any good? Titans defense is good and will be even better with Saleh as the head coach. Nice. So yeah, Saleh comes in as a head coach, defensive guy, defensive guru, pretty much, right? One of the best defensive minds currently in the NFL. So I absolutely do believe that that's going to have an impact on how this defense performs in the NFL this year, for sure, right? So I like that that assessment. Well, Saleh made SF's 3rd string defense look good in games last year. True. And it was crazy because it wasn't like their stats were great. Like they were bottom in like pressures, right? With Fred Warner and the gang out. San Francisco was bottom in like sacks as well, but they were still performing in like key pivotal scenarios. And a lot of that has to do with good coaching and, guys who can execute in moments like that. But you got to be able to coach your guys up. 3rd string guys aren't just going to get on the field and plug and play and be like immediately viable, right? So, sure, there were stats that weren't as impressive as maybe they would have liked to see, but in key scenarios, you're absolutely right, Walt. I mean, that's why San Francisco finished with a 12-5 record, despite being, again, back bottom of the NFL in stats and categories like quarterback pressures and sacks. And I want to say even like probably bottom in the league in like interceptions and forced fumbles and stuff like that, right? Like turnovers. So yeah, definitely impressive and definitely something to look forward to for the Titans defense to be a little bit better this year for sure. And so now the man of the hour, Carnell Tate. We kind of gave him a little bit of a foreshadowing here, but I'm going to go ahead and look at his highlights. And as you can see, it was already on my my search list because I have watched this tape before, but we're going to watch it again because it is impressive. It is impressive. So look at that. Goes up between 2 dudes, loses his helmet, still comes down with the ball, holds the ball through contact, through the ground, and just, you love to see that. Okay, nice little rollout. He somehow found the open spot in the zone defense, which is nice on an extended play like that. Little corner route or a fade over the shoulder, easy high point. Let's watch that one more time. That was a nice route. Gets just enough space from the defender, and one-on-one coverage, like he's gonna get that ball every single time. Another down the field pass, even underthrown, still gets it and still makes the touchdown. So let's check it out. Ooh. I don't even know what route that is. What even is that route called? Because that's not a normal streak. And that's not a post. That was nice. Would have liked to see him. I don't think he saw that other defender. Would have liked to see him cut right there and take it to the end zone. But that other defender was like hidden pretty much. So what we're seeing is a lot of downfield passes. And I like to see that. A lot of downfield action here. Let's see. What was his what did he finish stats wise? Carnell Tate measurements. He's 6'2 and a half or 6'2 and a quarter, weighing 192 pounds. So he's actually kind of thin for a 6'2 guy. .2025 stats. 875 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns across 11 games. Interesting. Not as impressive as I was expecting, but this is what you like to see. Just bomb it. Fuck it. He opens somewhere. And some of these balls aren't even like good balls. Like underthrown. He has to slow down to get to them. What was his 40? What was it, like 4.3? Damn, 4.5? Shit. That's kind of slow, dude. That's not as fast as I was expecting. But I guess that's kind of true. His speed isn't like popping out of the screen or anything like that. I think it's probably his like route running ability. Clearly he has good route running ability and also just finds the spots and defenses. And I'm not sure if he's playing like a ton of great teams. Well, he's playing against a 10-0 team right now. He's playing against Indiana. So let's see. Quarterback makes a good saves the play. Okay, so that was a broken play. That was good though that he found the open spot. Seems to have a good rapport with his quarterback. Trusts him for sure. So that actually might be stuff we see translate into the NFL. Broken plays, Cam Ward scrambles. Carnell Tate just gets open, finds the opening in the defense, right? Where is Carnell Tate going in fantasy drafts? Wow, he's going as wide receiver 30. He's going above Marvin Harrison Jr. That's kind of crazy. That actually is shocking a little bit. People trust, I mean, it's not like it's necessarily that much higher, but like still, the fact that he's going in the same round and is ranked above Marvin Harrison Jr. is kind of wild to me because, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., we did see him have some pretty good games last year. Now, when he got hurt and never really quite returned to form, but before he got hurt, let's say 5 out of the 9 games that he played were viable and, in fact, almost probably week-winning performances. So, you know, especially for where you drafted him as probably like a wide receiver 3 or a flex or something like that. So this was good for that, you know, draft position, so to speak. Now, people are obviously a little worried about Marvin Harrison Jr., but for him to be going below Carnell Tate is a little wonky to me. But you know what's crazy? I probably would do that. I probably would pick up Carnell Tate over Marvin Harrison Jr. That sounds insane, I know. But like, I'm not picking up Marvin Harrison Jr. to be like my wide receiver 3 or something at this point in the draft anyways. So, you know, I'm not necessarily picking up guys in this range to be starters because, again, in round 7, round 6, I'm looking for depth. I'm probably still not rocking a quarterback or a tight end. So I'm on my 3rd or 4th running back and or wide receiver minimum, right? So if I'm picking up a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Carnell Tate here, it's because I want them as depth, not to be like a starter for me every single week. So if I'm looking at a guy who I need to be sort of like a late flyer, or not a late flyer, a mid-round flyer who's on my bench, but can be startable later on in the year, yeah, sure. You could make the argument for Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not necessarily saying to not pick him up, but I think I would rather go with a guy who is probably going to be the number one target on this team. Like Marvin Harrison Jr., you still got Trey McBride to deal with. You still got the emergence of guys like Michael Wilson to worry about. So if Marvin Harrison Jr. is sort of like the 2A, 3 option on a team that sure might be better than Tennessee this year, I think I would still take Carnell Tate, who is going to be the clear number one on this team, over Marvin Harrison Jr., who again is probably going to be like, again, the 2A or 2B / even third option on this team. So we'll see. I think he end up. I think actually, to be fair to Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he actually is better than Michael Wilson on paper. So, and he also got ripped this offseason. He got jacked, bro. Like dude looks like freaking Terminator right now. So I think he's motivated to actually put in work this year and become a dude that we thought he would be. So maybe don't underestimate Marvin Harrison Jr., but like I think I've seen enough from him, and I'm willing to be wrong on Marvin Harrison Jr. to go pick up a guy like Carnell Tate, who looks pretty reliable, not gonna lie, and is probably gonna be solid on this team, especially in garbage time, right? Nico Dobbs is saying MHJ was a rookie last year. It's hard to believe in MHJ being better than Tate, but we know that Brissett is amazing with passes. Well, Brissett is just going to throw like 40 plus times a game, because that's just what they're probably going to need to do. Except a lot of those are probably going to be dump off passes now to Jeremiah Love, right? So that's probably what we're going to see a lot of as well. And so even then, so that also takes a little bit away from Marvin Harrison Jr.'s viability and consistency, maybe, or like reliability, right? So yeah, let's see. Was it his rookie year last year? I think it's his third year now, right? Yeah. So he's been in the league for 2 years. So this is his third year, and he finished as wide receiver 30 his first year, and then finished as wide receiver 49 year 2. But that's probably largely because he missed 5 games, and when he came back, he wasn't really that good. But again, if we're looking at this, 5 out of 9 games where you're viable and a starter, like, I think isn't the worst. So, but this might be kooky, but I'm still picking up Carnell Tate over him. Anyways, the other 2 guys to mention on this pass catching room here is Wan'Dale Robinson and Calvin Ridley. Wan'Dale Robinson last year actually had some decent usage. There were some moments where, finishing with 92 catches and 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns is not bad, considering he was on a terrible team and had Jackson Dart and, like, I want to say, who was the backup there? After Jackson Dart went down, who was the backup there? Back up QB for Giants in 2025. Oh, yeah, it was Russell Wilson and then Jameis Winston. That's right. That's so funny. Okay, so there were games for sure where Wan'Dale Robinson was like just getting force-fed the ball, right? Let's look at some of these games. 12 targets, 11 targets, 11 targets, 9 targets, 14 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, and like clearly, I think this is the big part of why he was doing this is because Malik Neighbors went down, I want to say like week 1 or week 2. So it was like he immediately was put into sort of like you have to be a person we can throw the ball to because there's just nobody else here. Like Sterling Shepard, I don't think was doing it. I think there was a guy named, I'm blanking on his name, but there was a third guy that was kind of stepping up a little bit, but it was really Wan'Dale Robinson who was like the more reliable guy. His snap percentage again shot up pretty much to the ceiling once Malik Neighbors went down. So a lot of snaps, a lot of targets. It was just sheer volume. His efficiency was not great. There were some games that were good though, right? Like it really was just a matter of, was the matchup good or not? At Detroit, in a dome, 14 targets, 9 catches, 156 yards, and a touchdown. Like, that it's hard to beat that as a guy you're getting off the waiver wire, at least at this particular moment in time. You probably picked him up week 6, week 7, or something like that. I doubt you picked him up week 2. Maybe you did, but after those 3 down weeks, you probably dropped him, and then somebody else picked him up, right? But definitely had a stretch where he was good, and then even in the fantasy playoffs, 2 out of the 3 weeks, viable, solid. If you made it past week 16, he probably helped you win your championship, week 17. So when he gets targets, he's solid. But I don't think he's going to be the number 1 on this team. And I think, again, I would probably trust, the rookie stud coming out of college in Carnell Tate over Wan'Dale Robinson. But that isn't to say I don't think Wan'Dale's not going to get targets. You know what I mean? Yo, wait. Walt Grizzly is saying Wan'Dale won't be starting by the end of the year. Interesting. So you think it's going to be like, what, Kamir DK, Elik Ayo-Minor, or somebody like that who overtakes Wan'Dale? Maybe I could see Elik Ayo-Minor, who had some decent games last year as well, and then I think he got hurt. But like,
6 targets.
When he had some targets, I guess he had 7 targets here, only caught 2 of them. I mean, there were some games where he was getting a decent amount of targets actually. So maybe we do see Elik Ayo-Minor eventually leapfrog our boy Wan'Dale, but that is to say, like, I'm probably gonna still avoid Wan'Dale Robinson. He's going up here, pick 89, which is crazy to me. I'd probably pick up guys like Michael Wilson, or even my first QB with like a Brock Purdy or something like that, or even like if I'm looking at Wan'Dale or RJ Harvey, I'm gonna pick up RJ Harvey. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I think, a no-brainer here. Even going down so far as to pick up guys like maybe Bo Nix, who is coming off of an injury as well. I know that. Maybe Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. People are kind of thinking he's going to be in sort of like a angry Patty mode where he wants to prove people wrong that last year was just a fluke, or for whatever reason, like, that injury wasn't something that's going to knock him out of that elite conversation. He actually had some really good games last year before everything kind of went to shit. After the bye, only had 1 really decent game, but, so I don't know maybe what was going on there. Probably just tough matchups. At Denver, that's tough. And then Houston, for sure, tough. Los Angeles Chargers, definitely a tougher matchup, but not nearly on the same level as like a Houston or a Denver. Still, you could probably chalk that up to bad matchups, and maybe those were predictable down games. But once he got hurt, like, just people kind of just stopped believing in him going into this year, it seemed. So that's why he's going all the way down here, where normally he would be going in sort of like the top 3, top 4 range of quarterbacks. That said, I'm probably still avoiding Patrick Mahomes, actually, now that I think about it. So, but Wan'Dale, still going too high. I don't know why people believe in him this much. I think it was really just like he showed you that he could be reliable on a bad team and with volume, right? I don't think he's going to see this volume. I think his target share gets cut in half. Like, I think the most targets we see Wan'Dale have the entire year is like 7. That was like his average last year, right? So that's my take on Wan'Dale. That's why I think I'm a little bit lower on him than other people. But I'm with Walt, where I could see maybe Kamir DK or Elik Ayo-Minor overtaking him in this offense at some point, just because both of those guys were drafted by this team and like they showed flashes last year. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But to wrap up the Titans, because I do want to move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cam Ward, sneaky back end of a draft stasher, right? I'm probably picking him up at the back of a draft to be my backup quarterback who will likely end up being a top 12 guy in my mind, largely due to the fact that this team takes a big step forward, not only offensively, but also defensively. So they're going to be in games where they actually might have a shot. And if they don't, then they're going to be in garbage time scenarios where we've already seen Cam Ward perform in garbage time. And again, it was encouraging to see through the last 5 to 6 games of the year last year, he threw 0 interceptions threw 1 interception and threw 10 touchdowns. So, ball security, definitely a big factor here of why I kind of am trusting Cam Ward. And also, I think his rushing attack upside is going to really come into play this year, because maybe this team actually wants to get that going, as opposed to last year when perhaps, the head coach, I forget what his name was or who he was, but he's clearly not there anymore. Now it's Robert Saleh. Maybe that head coach was just not willing to take the risk of putting Cam Ward, in running scenarios. I don't know what it was, but we barely saw any rushing attempts from Cam Ward last year. I think that changes this year, right? Tony Pollard, not really high on him where he's going. Carnell Tate, happy to pick him up where he's going. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, Calvin Ridley, I'm ignoring those guys pretty much. So that's my take on the Titans. Let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right. Jacksonville Jaguars, let's see. Last year, they finished with 13-4. They won that division, and they kind of fizzled out in the playoffs, I think, pretty quickly. I forget where they lost, but not really important, I think, for what we need to discuss here, because the big, I guess, talking point everybody really wants to know is Trevor Lawrence and let's just see what his news is. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Not stats. Give me his news. So Liam Cohen praises Trevor Lawrence, growing confidence. Trevor Lawrence joins Cowboys and Packers stars. Right. So I don't think Trevor Lawrence got hurt last year. Let me just make sure. Maybe that was the year before that I'm thinking about. So, yeah, no, he actually finished the year pretty strong. Jeez, 44 points against New York Jets in Week 15, 31 points against Denver in Week 16, and then 24. So he actually, if you stuck with Trevor Lawrence, he had a really bad beginning of the year. You probably drafted him to be your starting QB. He clearly was the reason you lost a few of these games early on, if you stuck with him through these troubles. And then after the bye, he was pretty much set and forget, except for 1 or 2 weeks, which you probably, because he didn't perform well against Houston in Week 3, you probably had another option ready to go against Houston in Week 10 if you were paying attention, right? So either way, the rest of the year after that, 20 points here, 21 points, 19.4 points, 44 points, 31 points, 24 points. So solid performance. And in fact, if you were someone who bought low on Trevor Lawrence, Week 10, Week 11, that was probably a money move for you, because again, the rest of the year was pretty much set and forget for this guy. So where he's going in drafts is QB9, right around here in round 8. So we're talking about right above guys like Dak Prescott, and then you have other quarterbacks going below him a couple rounds later, like Jackson Dart, Brock Purdy. So he's right here in this sort of middle tier range of guys that could end up being top 10, top 5 type quarterbacks. Last year, again, he finished as the quarterback 4. And a lot of that was towards the end of the year, sure, but that's when it matters almost the most. So I'm not necessarily saying okay, he's going to do this again this year. I'm going to look at their schedule actually, just to kind of project a little bit of what his outlook could look like this year. But it's Cleveland at home, Week 1, then it's at Denver, then it's against New England, then it's at Cincinnati. So, and then it's Philadelphia, then it's Houston. So those first 6 games, 3 out of those 6 games are really down matchups, right? At Denver's tough. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for Trevor Lawrence, even though we saw him literally put up 31 points at Denver last year late down the stretch, which is crazy. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he ran a touchdown in and threw for 3 and 0 interceptions. So pretty efficient in terms of his touchdown to interception ratio, and got one on the ground. So that's obviously a huge boost in your fantasy production as a quarterback. But this year, maybe that's not necessarily how it goes. I don't know. We'll see, right? But my point being, where did that schedule go? My point being is we could see him get off to a bit of a slower start like he did last year. Then again, Cleveland week 1, that's just going to be lock in Trevor Lawrence. He's going to go nuclear, right? New England could be a little bit of a tough matchup. At Cincinnati, I think that's going to be a shootout, so that's actually a great game to play him in. Philadelphia could be a tough one. And again, Houston week 6, definitely probably I'll look for someone else to be starting in Trevor Lawrence's place for that week. And then we have a bye week 7. So theoretically, we're talking about 2 to 3 weeks that we don't want to start Trevor Lawrence. At least one, obviously, at least 2 with Houston in the bye week, right? Week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7. When he gets back, though, it's Indianapolis Colts, it's at Baltimore, it's at Tennessee, it's at New York, it's at Tennessee again. So he's got a really great stretch right after the bye week, and then it's at Chicago, home against Pittsburgh, at Houston, which is a tough matchup. That's the first week of the fantasy playoffs. So if I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence, I'm at least thinking to myself, like, sure, he's got a great second half of the year for sure in the fantasy regular season, but the second that first week rolls around of fantasy playoffs, I need to have a backup quarterback. I am not going to feel comfortable starting Trevor Lawrence against Houston week 15. I'm just not, especially at Houston. Their defense did not get worse. Their defense, I think, is either the same or better than it was last year. And that's crazy to think because I think they were literally the top in like all the categories defensively last year, right? So anyways, then it's at Dallas week 16, and then it's against Washington week 17. So those games don't scare me nearly as much as obviously that week 15 game. So if you can get past week 15, then you're obviously locking Trevor Lawrence into your lineup. But you definitely need to have a backup quarterback, at least for some of these stretches where we're going to see some tough matchups, like again, week 5, week 6, week 7, where he has a bye on week 7, and then week 15. But the rest of the year, I actually really like Trevor Lawrence, and I think he is going lower than where he'll finish. I mean, he's being drafted as a QB9, where he finished as the QB4 last year. I think he could easily finish again as a top 5 QB. We've seen him do it. Only once, actually. Only last year. That's kind of nuts. I thought he for sure had one more top 5 finish other than last year, but I guess not. But he has had a top 8 finish. So year 2022, season 2022, he finished as top 8 quarterback. Solid. But again, and he had a tough beginning of the year last year. So Trevor Lawrence could be that sneaky mid-round quarterback that you pick up that ends up overperforming his draft position. And we're talking about him at the end of the year as like, damn, why didn't I think to pick him up? Why wouldn't I have just reached for him? Like, we're talking about guys like Caleb Williams and Justin Herbert going around a whole round ahead of him, essentially, almost, right? Like about a little more than half a round. I don't know. Just something to think about, right? I've never been a Trevor Lawrence guy, but I'm considering going Trevor Lawrence in at least a couple leagues this year because he finished very strong last year. And I don't know. I have a feeling that even if they take a step back in terms of their win-loss record, because they won 14 games last year, I don't know if they do that again this year. That doesn't matter to me when it comes to Trevor Lawrence's fantasy output. I still think he actually could end up finishing again as a top 5 quarterback, right? Where he's going as the QB9 in drafts. So anyways, that's my Trevor Lawrence spiel. Let's get on to Bashaw Tootin. Bashaw Tootin, he is a guy who finished with 83 carries and 307 yards and five touchdowns on the ground for a 3.7 yard average. It's crazy because they lost ETN, But they did get Chris Rodriguez Jr., and then I think they drafted this guy. No, actually, he's a second-year player. So this guy, LaQuint Allen, 7th-round pick. So I actually think the reason why people are kind of high on Bashal Tutin is because it's just there's nobody here, dude. Right? There's just nobody here. So he's clearly going to be the number one guy. They are hoping that these averages, for whatever reason, I think. Hi, my cat. I think players, fantasy managers, and analysts are hoping that these averages go up because, again, 3.7 yards per carry on the year is just not great, especially in a guy that you're looking at as the number one running back in this offense, and you're also picking him up around guys like David Montgomery, Jalen Warren. Jadarian Price is going below Bashal Tutin. She wants to be in the mix. She was getting a little... I was ignoring her, so she was meowing at me. But, is that crazy, though? To look at the Bashal Tutin draft position and be like, yo, what the hell is going on here? Is it because he gets some passing work? No, it's not even like, at least last year, his passing work was not great. So we have no reason to believe that all of a sudden, maybe he had one good passing game where he caught 2 catches for 32 yards and a touchdown. Literally his best game of the year across the board. So are we expecting that to be like more the norm here? I don't think so. I think that's a little bit of a reach. And even though, sure, there's straight up nobody else around here who we can look at as like, maybe taking over this backfield from him in any kind of a meaningful capacity, ETN was clearly the better running back. And there was no comparison. He was more efficient. He was more productive. He had better looks in terms of higher value targets or attempts and carries, right? So like, just all of those carries go away, sure. Let's take a look at how many carries he had last year. Do you think paying round 2 for Josh Allen is totally a waste because QB value isn't important until a later round? I wouldn't say it's a waste, but you're drafting a certain type of team. You're drafting a certain composition. When you're going a quarterback that high, you automatically are foregoing depth at either running back and or wide receiver, right? Those are just, in my opinion, those are the 2 most important positions. Like, I can win any given week with a streaming quarterback and a streaming tight end, right? As long as I know that my nucleus of wide receivers and running backs are like top 5, top 10, even caliber dudes at my peak, and then maybe like they bottom out at like top 30, top 35 type guys, right? So if my starting nucleus of wide receivers and running backs are anywhere between like top 5 to top 35 guys, then I don't really care who I'm starting at at quarterback and tight end each and every week, because I know that like the bulk of my points are going to be coming from my stud wide receivers and running backs anyways. That's just me though. I know that there are people who are those quarterback and tight end type people who just, that's what they do, right? They pick up tight ends early, or they pick up quarterbacks early, or maybe they do both, and they're willing to maybe forego some of that depth at wide receiver and running back to have a set and forget guy at a tight end or wide or quarterback position for the entire year, except for obviously maybe like bye weeks or something like that. So is that, it's just really a matter of like, how do you play? In my mind, or in my experience rather, I have had the most success, and maybe this is just purely because of this is how I draft largely anyways. Like I rarely will end up with a Josh Allen. I rarely will end up with a Patrick Mahomes when he was like a top 3 guy, right? I rarely ended up with those players because I just didn't draft quarterbacks that high. But again, it's just preference. But to finish my point, and maybe it's just sheer numbers or volume of like the amount of times I've done this, but I feel like I have more success when I wait on quarterback and I shore up my wide receivers and my running back depth than picking up a wide receiver, than picking up an early QB or a tight end in like the first 3 rounds or first 4 rounds, because that always, in my mind, leaves a hole in my in my roster, right? It just feels either in the starting position, I have like suboptimal guys. There's like, maybe 2 out of the 3 guys in my starting position for wide receivers are good, but it doesn't feel great that third guy is like barely a flex caliber dude, right? Because I decided to get Josh Allen, and also, you could make that argument with running backs as well. So, yes, it's worth it if you really like those types of players and you want a set and forget type guy. Sure, that could be like sort of peace of mind for a lot of people, and especially if you're in like shallower leagues, like 8 team leagues, I think it makes sense to go get a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. I think that actually makes more sense than in like a 10 to 12 to 16 team league where you might be getting that quarterback that's a stud, but your team looks just like a wasteland when it comes to, again, your wide receivers and running backs, right? So anyways, so let's move on. But Bashal Tuden, I don't trust it. I think he's going way too high, and that's all I'm going to say on him. I don't really want to get into the weeds too much on him because I do want to move on to the final team, which is the Houston Texans. But that's my take on Bashal Tuden. And I'm just avoiding any of these other running backs, right? We talked about it a little bit earlier in the stream today. Brian Thomas Jr., I think he's got the talent to have a good bounce back year. He's going down here as wide receiver 35 in round 7, round 8. Last year was just an abomination. He finished as wide receiver 4 his rookie year, so we know he can do it. It's just a matter of his target share getting back up to the status that we know it can be, as well as his efficiency, because last year, for whatever reason, he had drops, he had miscues, and it just didn't look good. I don't know what the hell was going on during the offseason with him between his rookie year and his sophomore year, but he did not show up ready to play. In fact, it wasn't until week 6 till he had even a serviceable wide receiver fantasy game, and by then you were already super frustrated that he was probably on your bench, right? He might have been on your bench, especially because it was against Seattle. So this actually might have been a game where you weren't even helped by him because, again, he was on your bench. So this year he's, again, going pretty low in drafts, round 7, round 8. Do I think he's someone who is just a for sure bust again this year? No. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that last year was just an abomination, and for whatever reason, maybe like because he didn't get off to a good start, maybe him and Trevor Lawrence just like kind of didn't have a good rapport or whatever last year. I don't know, right? There are probably some things that I would want to look into a little more before I fully pull the trigger on Brian Thomas Jr. But I do think that this is a good opportunity for a guy to definitely outperform his ADP, right? If he's going down here around guys like Cortland Sutton, Alec Pierce, DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr., Chris Godwin, I don't see the difference in terms of like upside, or rather, I don't see other guys who have higher upside than Brian Thomas Jr. Maybe Cortland Sutton, but definitely not Alec Pierce, definitely not Chris Godwin, definitely not Michael Pittman Jr., right? Brian Thomas Jr. has higher upside in my mind because I've seen it before, right? We've seen it in his rookie year. Finished as a top 4 wide receiver than any of these other guys in this area. So again, I'm the type of guy who I'll probably have 3 to 4 wide receivers already by the time I even look at a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., right? But if I'm talking about a guy who could be a top 12, even a top 20 wide receiver, right, that I'm getting down here, and it's just a solid depth piece that I don't even have to rely on until I can see it first, that's a shot I'm willing to take almost every single time, right? I love these types of players who, were super sought after the previous year maybe were drafted in like the 3rd or 4th round or higher, and then have a down year for whatever reason because of maybe slumping or bad quarterback play or injuries or a combination of 3 or all 3, or just like maybe a bad offense or something like that, which I don't think was the case with Jacksonville because they were a good team. He just was underperforming. It's the perfect scenario where we look at the guy, he's like, he could bounce back. And in fact, he should bounce back. So, again, it depends on your team comp. I wouldn't necessarily pick him up as like your wide receiver 2. If you have to rely on him to be like a starter for you, I don't know if I would necessarily want to pick him up. But if you're picking up starters at wide receivers down here in round 8, round 7 anyways, then you probably made a mistake in your draft. And yeah, so you could do worse though in terms of who you could rely on in this range. Like, again, not really relying on Chris Godwin. I don't know if I trust him. Michael Pittman Jr., I don't know if I trust him either. Alec Pierce, we just talked about him. That's going to be tough for me to trust him. Courtland Sutton is probably the most reliable guy in this range who I could say I would make an argument to pick up over Brian Thomas Jr. But even then, I still think I'm rocking with Brian Thomas Jr. Just because of the way their schedule broke down when we looked at their schedule. I just think there's going to be opportunities for him to have like pretty high upside games like that. Again, that shootout in Cincinnati is going to be incredible, right? Even this early game at Denver could be a sneaky play just because it's like beginning of the year, Denver, nice weather. It could be a cool shootout vibe for sure as well. Division matchup, right? Oh, wait. No, sorry. They're not in the same division. But that's my take on Brian Thomas Jr. Let's move on to Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, and Brenton Strange real quick and close out the Jags before we hit the Texans. Parker Washington, I know people are talking about him. Let's take a look at what he did last year. 58 catches, 847 yards, 5 touchdowns, 14.6 average per catch. So that's really awesome to see. The reason why he was so efficient was because he was getting, I want to say, a lot of downfield looks, especially towards the end of the year. So like beginning of the season, he had one game where he had 11 targets. That was kind of a fluke. Had another game where he had 10 targets, only caught 4 each of those games, and not great fantasy finishes. After the bye, though, for whatever reason, they started to target him a lot more, and these targets were actually connecting now. Right, his first week after the bye, caught 8 of 9 passes for 90 yards, incredible. Next week, caught 3 of 7, so not a great ratio, but did get a touchdown, and I want to say maybe it was like a 20-plus yard touchdown or something like that. I don't know. Actually, his average was pretty low that game. Next big game was Week 12 against Arizona. So obviously the down game was against LA Chargers. So that was potentially predictable. Chargers were pretty solid defensively last year. Arizona, though, was his next game, which is where he actually hit his ceiling up until Week 16. But 18.1 points, solid. 7 targets, 5 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. So this was where he really started to, sort of flash and show that he actually could be solid. 3 down weeks, though, including a week where I think he missed a game because he was injured potentially. Then when he came back, man, this is what I'm talking about. At Denver, I mean, people have been shredding Denver, apparently, right? At least maybe this was the same game that Trevor Lawrence went off, so obviously there was a correlation there. But 10 targets, 6 catches, 145 yards, and a touchdown. His second best average of the year with 24.2 yards per catch. Awesome stuff. And then just this is what I'm talking about, though. This is like the Gabe Davis effect, right? Where they finish really strong and maybe win people championships. And then we look at them the next year and we're like, oh, well, recency bias. Last 2 games of the year, week 16, week 17, even in a tough matchup, dude performed. He got back-to-back 10 target games and caught at least 6 of those and then 8 the next game, right? So, oh man, I need to pick up Parker Washington. Where's Parker Washington going? He's going down here in round 9, round 10, right next to Wan'Dale Robinson, Michael Wilson, Jacoby Myers. So, dudes who are kind of like not surefire dudes. Obviously, they're wide receiver 4, fringe flex kind of dudes. But are we trusting Parker Washington over Wan'Dale Robinson? Are we trusting Parker Washington over Jacoby Myers, who is now on this team as well, who is another guy who kind of like reminds me of a Wan'Dale? It's interesting. Jacoby Myers and Wan'Dale Robinson are like similar dudes where they randomly will get a bunch of volume. They're not super efficient, but the volume makes them relevant. Obviously, you get like 6+ targets a game and you catch more than 5 of them, you're probably going to have a decent stat finish, right? You're probably going to have a decent finish in the stat department. So he did have 3 back-to-back games with touchdowns, but that was his only stretch with any touchdowns. And then he finished the year kind of on a downtick. So I think he was, where was he last year? He played for 2 different teams maybe last year. I don't know what this means. Jacoby Myers. Let's see. Let me click on our boy Jacoby. So Jacoby Myers played, let's see, where was he playing? No, let's look at his game log. Previously with Las Vegas. Okay, so he was acquired by Jacksonville right around first week of November. And then that was where, let's see actually what his, so after week 11, he actually started popping off. So week 3 or week 4, week 3, so week 12, but the third week with the Jags was where he started seeing some actual decent production. And then after week 15, he just fell off a cliff. So I don't know, maybe that was like the Parker Washington effect or something like that. Parker Washington actually ended up getting a lot more targets down the stretch than Jacoby Myers. So that's probably who I'm trusting. If I'm going either of these guys, which they're going around in the same parts of drafts, I'm targeting Parker Washington over Jacoby Myers. And in fact, I'm skipping out on Jacoby Myers entirely. Like, I'd much rather pick up guys like Ricky PJ, like even, I don't want to say Quentin Johnston because that kind of feels gross. But even down here, nah, maybe not. But if I'm looking in this range for guys that I need to start, I've already made a dire mistake in my draft, and I'm probably throwing up my hands and saying, fuck it anyways. So you're only picking up guys down here who are going to be backups for you, hopefully. But at the same time, again, I'm probably picking up Parker Washington over Jacoby Myers. That's just me. It's hard to really justify it other than just like, it's just a vibe check. It's just a vibe check, right? And then Brenton Strange, last person we'll talk about before we move on. Brenton Strange just got paid. Let's actually take a look at his contract. But before we do, he's going in round 15 as tight end 17. He finished last year as tight end 26, which is kind of insane to think because he actually had some pretty solid games down the stretch here. He just missed a bunch of time. So obviously, no matter how much you perform late in the year, if you miss 6 games or something like this, 5 games, it's going to be tough to crack the top 10, let alone the top 20. However, when he did come back, the encouraging thing to see was that he was getting a decent amount of targets. Like, I want to say he was averaging about 5 targets a game. And then, 3 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks, not great. And only 2 of those were really worth it to you because the last one came in week 18. But 4 out of the last 5 games, I'll say he had top, I guess we'll say 3 out of the last 6 games, he had top 10 tight end finishes. So tight end 4 here, tight end 17 here, tight end 10, week 16 against Denver. Solid. It's like really hard to ask for much more than this as a streaming tight end because you picked him up off the wire, right? Like, he wasn't someone who was drafted. He didn't need to be like a starting tight end for you. each week. Like, it was really more of like a streaming type guy. When he came back from injury, again, he had 4 out of 6 playable games, startable games for you at the tight end position, maybe 3. But let's just look at his contract, because that is, I think, the biggest part of this conversation here with Brenton Strange is they decided to pay him. So let's see, 2 days ago. Oh, wow. I have to subscribe? Thanks, man. I'm not going to do that. Let's see. Okay, let's just look at this New York Times article. So the the Jacksonville Jaguars and tight end Brenton Strange have agreed to a 3-year contract extension worth up to $48 million, according to multiple reports on Wednesday. The deal reportedly includes a $25 million guaranteed signing bonus, probably, or just $25 million guaranteed. And Brenton Strange, 25, was entering the final year of his rookie deal. He's coming off a breakout year in which he recorded career highs in catches, yards, and touchdowns, despite missing 5 games with a hip injury. Strange started all 12 games he played in during the 2025 season. So the Jaguars selected Strange in the second round of the 2023 draft. The Penn State product started 4 games as a rookie. In his 3 seasons, he has caught 91 catches for 986 yards and 6 touchdowns. Okay, so I think this is just like they like what they saw. He flashed a little bit last year, and they're expecting him to be a big part of this offense, or at least a bigger part of this offense than maybe he was for his first 3 years. And if this is a guy you're getting in the back of drafts who has had finishes like tight end 7 finish here, tight end 4, tight end 7, tight end 10, right? So he has top 10 each week. He can finish as a top 10 tight end, and you're getting him in the back of drafts for free, essentially, as the tight end 18 he's being drafted in, tight end 17. I think that's exactly what I want to see. That's exactly the type of guy I target as a tight end, as my starting tight end, right? He might not end up being my starter for the rest of the year, but at least I know I get him for free in the back of drafts. I don't have to waste like an early or even a mid-round pick for him, and he's going to be viable. He has top 10 tight end potential each and every week on a team where I know that they're coming off of a 14-3 season where they won their division. Maybe they take a step back, but they're still going to be in close games where they're going to have to rely on guys like Brenton Strange to be solid pieces in this offense in close game scenarios where, like he's probably going to be a big factor in the red zone for them because they lost Trevor Etienne, right? Is it Travis Etienne? Yeah, Travis Etienne. Is it Trevor or Travis? Jesus. Travis. Where they lost Etienne, who last year had 260 carries, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Finished as a top 10 running back. That guy goes away and is replaced by Bayshal Tootin, who I don't believe in, right? So, like, they're going to struggle in the red zone a little bit on the ground. And whether it's Trevor Lawrence taking it in himself or it's Brenton Strange who's stepping up as like a red zone threat for the Jags here, like somebody has to step in and fill the void where Travis Etienne left, right? Fill the void that Travis Etienne left in the red zone when he departed here, right? So I think Brenton Strange could be a big part of that. So might be a little too optimistic for some folks. I think the reason why I'm so optimistic and the reason why I like Brenton Strange this year is because of where he's going in drafts. And honestly, by the time we get to the beginning of the year, I could actually see his draft stock rise a little bit. I could see him going like maybe in the 13th or 14th, or sorry, even as high as the 12th round by the time we get to the beginning of the season, right? So yeah, once draft season rolls around, once we hit like middle of August, late August, when all the drafts really start happening, again, I could see Brenton Strange rising up the ranks a little bit and going maybe closer to guys like Isaiah Likely, right? Dalton Kincaid. Who else? Maybe not George Kittle, but like right around here, Maybe Mark Andrews. Maybe this is a little closer, but like a couple rounds earlier, right? I think he's being underdrafted right now. So that's my take on Brenton Strange, and I think that covers it for the Jags. So might as well move on to the last team of the AFC South. We're talking about the Texans. They were the second team in this division last year. Usually I start with the top team and then I end with the worst team. I didn't do that this time around. So let's go and talk about the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud, down year for him. I think his defense probably carried him. Despite that, they finished as a 12-5 team. And let's just see where CJ Stroud is going this year in fantasy drafts. He's going round 13, round 14 as QB 22 or QB 24. And he finished as a QB 21. So it makes sense why he would be going down here. However, I think it's fair to say that he probably will outperform his performance from last year, because he also did miss some time. But to say that he'll do much better, or at least recapture maybe his first year sort of excitement or performance where he finished as QB 11, I don't know if I believe he'll do that. I don't think they'll even need him to. His passing attempts dropped significantly from 2024 to 2025 by almost 100. So that's obviously substantial. His yards per attempt is right around 7.2, so not great. He only threw for 19 touchdowns, which is the third year in a row where he's regressed in that stat. So do I want to sit here and think like, oh, okay, CJ Stroud is just going to come in here and get back to like a QB 10, QB 12 type performer? No. But what I will say is he's someone who I wouldn't be mad at sort of stashing on my bench, because if we take a look at their schedule, you could make the argument week 1 against Buffalo, that might be a tough matchup. Cincinnati, that definitely could be a shootout. At Indianapolis, division game, I don't know, maybe the defense kind of carries them that game. At Dallas, against Dallas at home, Texas matchup, I could see that actually being a shootout. High-powered offense with Dallas. Maybe they can put up a little bit of a fight. We'll see. At Tennessee, then it's Jacksonville, then it's New York. Then it's a bye, then it's Los Angeles Chargers, then it's at Cleveland. And so I guess my point being is there's not a lot of confidence that I'm seeing from this schedule that is making me think like, oh, okay, CJ Stroud is going to be like a top 12, top 10 guy. But it's also not necessarily showing me that it's going to be a tough season for him. It's probably going to be more of the same as last year, which last year their defense carried them and they didn't really need CJ Stroud to do much. Like I said, he had 90 less attempts basically than the previous year last year, right? So his attempts went down, his yardage total, everything down across the board, right? He only threw for 3,000 yards and he doesn't have any rushing ability, right? He rushed for 209 yards, 1 touchdown. So he's just someone who is just a game manager at this point, right? Is he serviceable in certain matchups? Sure. And so maybe that's why you can argue that it's worth picking him up as a backup. But like some of these games were not very predictable. 28.8 points at Baltimore. Would you really think to start CJ Stroud at Baltimore, right? If you picked him up as your backup or like a streaming guy, like I probably wouldn't expect that from him. San Francisco, sure, San Francisco was struggling a lot last year against every position, but quarterback specifically. So that one probably was more predictable. But then he missed some time, came back, and then Arizona, yeah, definitely predictable actually as well. But this Las Vegas game, you would think that would have been an easy knockout set and forget game for him, especially in the fantasy playoffs, especially after he came off of a ceiling game against, or close to ceiling game against Arizona. Nope. Only threw 35 times, but only completed 23 passes for 187 yards and only 1 touchdown. So just really disappointing game, right? Finished with 11.5 fantasy points. So if you were relying on him at all in the fantasy semifinals, he burned you big time, So I think we're in for more of the same this year. Just that defense didn't get any worse. Again, we mentioned it earlier. And if they don't need CJ Stroud to throw 30 plus times a game, 35 plus times a game. I mean, he's literally averaging under 30 throws a game in some of these instances, right? There were only, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games out of the 14 that he played where he threw for over 30 attempts. Every other game, he threw for under 30 attempts. So that's not fantasy. And again, unless he's rushing a bunch, he's not going to be fantasy viable. So probably a streamer. I don't think I would pick him up. I think there would be other guys in this range that I'd be willing to pick up. Like again, we were talking about Cam Ward. Cam Ward's going almost a full round below CJ Stroud, maybe a little less. But like, Cam Ward has the ability and the potential. Not that CJ Stroud doesn't have the potential. Not that CJ Stroud doesn't have the ability, but I don't know if he has the potential in that system or in that situation to become sort of a top 10, top 12 quarterback. So a QB1, whereas Cam Ward, as we mentioned earlier, does have that ability and potential in my mind, especially if he takes any kind of a significant step forward this year, specifically in the rushing game, right? In the rushing category. So, which that's what I believe in with him. I saw his college tape. I know what his numbers were. He is a rushing quarterback. They just didn't do it last year for whatever reason. I think we see that happen this year. And so for that reason, I'm way more likely to pick up Cam Ward as my little sort of like backup, maybe experiment, someone who I can drop and be fine with, right? Either of these guys are going in the range where they're not, that expensive. So, easy to drop and just not feel too bad about it, right? If they don't pan out. But way higher upside in my mind with Cam Ward than with CJ Stroud, right? So I guess it's just your scenario that you're looking at. But like if CJ Stroud is your starting quarterback, you waited all the way to this round, and CJ Stroud is your starting quarterback, you made a mistake, right? You need to at least have someone like a Jared Goff or something like that, right? Matthew Stafford going up here as your starting quarterback for you to feel a little confident and then to be able to make picks like a Cam Ward or Bryce Young or something like that, who could end up being like a top 10 guy later on if like the cards end up panning out the way that you hope they would, right? So anyways, that's my take on the Houston Texans, I think. Or no, sorry. What? That was just CJ Stroud. Next, we have David Montgomery, who I'm actually pretty high on this year. I'm always kind of high on David Montgomery just because his efficiency is pretty top tier, right? Like, let's take a look. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. And I say that he averaged 4.5 yards per carry last year.
I really like
158 carries, so pretty solid. 716 rushing yards, but 8 touchdowns on the ground. So his touchdown ratio is solid. Maybe that was partially due to the fact that he was on the Lions, which is a pretty high caliber offense, and they score a lot of points, and we know that they have just a ton of studs on that team. And so David Montgomery was someone who was sort of like this role player who was short yardage, goal line scenario type back. And even though, again, he had 158 rushes, which is pretty decent for the fact that he was like the second RB on that team, it wasn't like he was the lead back in that backfield. So now he has the role all to himself, essentially. I don't know if I think that Woody Marks is going to come in here and steal a bunch of looks from him or anything like that. So, and this team, again, great defense. I would be happy to target David Montgomery where he's going over guys like DeAndre Swift, over guys like Bashal Tutin for sure, even maybe Bucky Irving, and I'm high on Travion Henderson, so maybe not Travion Henderson, but like that would be a tough one for me for sure. But even Cam Scatterbo, I would probably get a David Montgomery over Cam Scatterbo. Like if I'm looking at both those guys and like a Travion Henderson is gone and maybe even like a Travis Etienne or something like that, some guys up here who I probably would have targeted are gone, I would be happy to pick up David Montgomery, right? So it's just, again, his efficiency, solid. He's, how old is he right now? 29? Still right around in the prime of his career. Maybe not like prime, But like, here's a guy who for the last, let's see, stats.
Yeah, I really like this.
So over the last, let's just say 3 years since he's been at Detroit, 158 carries last year, 185 carries the year before, 219 carries the year before. So each of the last 3 years, he's had a downtick in carries. So that just means, in my mind, that like clearly this team was trusting Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit more and leaning maybe away from David Montgomery. Obviously, they decided to move on from him. So that was a big reason as to why maybe his carries obviously took a dip as well. But I could see him getting 250 plus carries this year and easily finish with like 10 to 12 touchdowns. That's a solid RB2. Like, I mean, I guess if you're talking about if he's as efficient as he's been, so 250 plus carries with like a 4.2 yard average, let's just say, that gets close to like almost like a little over 1,000 yards. Solid. 1,000 yards, 10 to 12 touchdowns. Again, that's like very solid RB2 performance. And you're getting him down here as an RB 24. So right on the edge of that RB2, RB3 category. And I think he could easily finish right on the edge of like RB1, RB2 territory, right? So I think the reason why maybe he's going this low, because again, I would probably pick him up closer to where ETN's going up here. You know, obviously with the Josh Jacobs news, I think we might find out a little bit more, and then people might be higher on him than where he's going now. But Kyren Williams, Breece Hall, I'd probably pick up Kyren Williams over any of these other guys that we talked about. I mentioned how high I am on Kyren and just the Rams in general. But if he's gone, and I'm looking at Breece Hall and Josh Jacobs, or maybe he's gone, but Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, and stuff like that, I probably would still pick up David Montgomery. Like, if maybe some of these other guys are gone, or I'm not necessarily in a position to pick up a guy like DJ Moore or Mike Evans or Jamal Williams, who are wide receivers that I'm pretty high on this year, right? Like if I don't need a wide receiver or either of them, or maybe I already have one of them, and I am looking at David Montgomery and Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams or whatever, like I'd probably pick up David Montgomery. So that's my red pill on David Montgomery. I think the opportunity there is just going to be pretty substantial. And with that defense constantly turning the ball over and giving them short field situations, like you could be easily in scenarios where you see David Montgomery get like 2-3 touchdowns in a game just because it's like, hey, the defense like turned it over on the 10 and they just handed it off to him 3 times and he fell in the end zone, right? For his 3rd touchdown of the game or something like that. So I think he's someone I'm high on. He could easily outperform his ADP, and so that's what I'll say about David Montgomery. Let's move on to the pass catchers. Nico Ballins, I mean, such a stud, right? If it wasn't for the fact that this team was just not really efficient in the pass attack, he would have probably finished as like top 5 wide receiver instead of just a top 7. But even then, top 7 is pretty solid for just what the year looked like for that team's pass attack in general, right? So when it mattered most, it was not great. Week 16, 9.9 points. That was definitely an upsetting game to see, especially in the fantasy playoffs. And then week 17, fantasy championships, 8.7 points, right? Only 4 targets, 3 catches, 57 yards, no touchdown. So that's a disappointment, right? And that was really, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he only had 5 games under 10 points when he played 15. So 10 out of the 15 games that he played, solid games, right? Very, very worth that pick capital that you picked him up at, and solid wide receiver 1 for you. It was really just those last couple weeks where it mattered more than any other week in the game, in the season, unfortunately, where he just didn't perform how you expected him to. And so, disappointing. And I think that's part of why maybe people are a little bit, sour on him this year. He's going below A.J. Brown, below Drake London, below Justin Jefferson. I would pick up A.J. Brown. We know this, over Nico Collins. But that's probably it. I would still pick up Nico Collins over like a Justin Jefferson and a Drake London. Both of those guys, maybe Drake London actually is someone who I'm more willing to pick up over Justin Jefferson, but like Justin Jefferson just makes me a little nervous. I don't know what that situation is going to look like with Kyler Murray. I don't even know if Kyler Murray is going to even be the quarterback by the end of the year when all is said and done at Minnesota. So, do I really want to like have some quarterback turmoil, with my wide receiver one, my stud guy that I picked up in the first round? Probably not. Right? He's good enough to where he could probably outperform through those sort of growing pains, but I just don't want to deal with that. And then similarly, Drake London, maybe less worried though, because Tua I think is more reliable than Kyler Murray is, but similar scenario, right? Is Tua going to end up being the guy by the end of the year? Like, I don't know. That's really a question that, probably will be, but it still is concerning that you would even have to wonder that, right? So, but A.J. Brown and Nico Collins, I know both of those guys have quarterbacks that are, unless something happens, knock on wood, like they're going to be the guys through the entire year. So, yeah, I don't know where I was really going with that in terms of Nico Collins, but I think my point being, I actually would probably draft Nico Collins over Justin Jefferson and Drake London, despite maybe people being a little higher on them for whatever reason, based off of scenario or potential usage or maybe game scripts that they'll be in, right? Because I'm sure Atlanta and Minnesota will both be in negative game scripts more often than not. So that means more passing. But just because you're passing the ball more doesn't necessarily mean you're always connecting, right? And Nico Collins is someone who, like, his catch rate, let's see, 71 out of 120 targets. So I want to say, like, not terrible, could be better. But a lot of that might have just been bad passes. Let's see drop rates, NFL drop rates. Okay, let's see if we can take a look at the. Oh shit! Is it? Drops. Let's see if we. I can't look at the opposite. Oh, here we go. You know what? I'll just look at it from this perspective. Regular season. Why is it only showing me up to 25? Is there like a paywall or some shit? Okay, here we go. Does this have drops? Yeah, this does have drops. Okay. So, damn, Jameson Williams led the league in drops, and then Amon-Ra had the second most drops? What? Holy shit, how long have I been muted for? Dude, no way. Have I been muted this entire time? Dude, how long have I been muted for? Somebody please tell me. A solid minute? Oh my God, that is wild, bro. That is wild. All right, well, welcome in, Zoothas. Thanks for letting me know I was muted, bro. Oh my gosh, that is comedy. That actually is comedy. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the VOD. Big streamer doing big streamer things. You know, hey, yeah, big is in the opposite, right? You know, we have fun here. That's hilarious. I can't believe I was muted for like hopefully not too long, but man, I don't know if I can go back and cover all the shit that we talked about. But I'll end it with this. Or I'll start wrapping it up. With Nico Collins, this was the point I wanted to make. 40% of his targets were not catchable. In fact, he only had one drop despite 48% or 48 of his targets not being catchable, right? So that's wild. And again, that just shows you his catch rate, incredible. So point being, Nico Collins finished as a wide receiver 7 last year. He's going now as a wide receiver 8, wide receiver 9 in drafts. I would probably pick him up over guys like Drake London and Justin Jefferson, right? I probably would pick up A.J. Brown over Nico Collins, but I'm kind of high on both of those guys this year. Less on Nico, obviously, but I think the reason why I'm willing to trust Nico is just he's a stud. He's the guy, and they need him to do well, right? Dude, I'm excited for our draft too, man. I'm getting stoked. I'm definitely getting stoked. I mean, we still got like 40 plus days, but those things are going to just fly by, man. Nico is definitely the best receiver in that division. 100%. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. isn't there, but he wasn't even good. Yeah, it's not even close, right? I mean, sorry. Michael Pittman Jr. was good, but not Nico status. And then obviously you have guys like, who do we look at? Nobody really on the Tennessee Titans that you can even get close to Nico with. Jacksonville Jaguars has Brian Thomas Jr., who like is the quote unquote closest, but last year we saw it. We were just looking at him. He had 8 drops last year. Brian Thomas Jr. did, right? Nope. 10 drops. So just like, it's not close. You're right. It's just not close. Pittman was good, but more of a steady, reliable guy, not someone who's going to light it up. 100%. We did see Pittman have like maybe 1 or 2 years where, to your point, like the volume was enough to, and he was good enough with that volume that like he was fantasy viable and maybe a top 12 guy. I want to say 1 year. Let's see. Did he finish as like a top 5 guy 1 year with like Andrew Luck once? Let's see. Never finished above top 13. He never did it. And did he even play with wide receiver or Andrew Luck? Yeah, he's always been like a 4th round wide receiver. Yeah, pretty much. You're right. Michael Pittman definitely, even in his best years, never really quite could crack sort of like that 4th or 3rd round draft capital, right? So yeah. But I do like Nico this year. I think he could be a solid addition to your team. I don't think I would avoid him like maybe some other people are avoiding him. And then the 2 other guys we'll talk about pretty much are Jaden Higgins and then Dalton Schultz. Jalen Noel, I think he's their rookie from last year from the 3rd round, who oddly enough, Jaden Higgins was also a rookie last year from the 2nd round. So they have 2 second-year wide receivers that they're relying on. Tank Dell, I think this is who I will mention. Luck retired in 19. Oh, so no, he never played with Luck. That's crazy, dude. That is crazy. Wow. I could have sworn they had 1 year together, but I guess not. So what was I about to look up? Tank Dell news. I think I saw something today that Tank Dell was doing drills, looked pretty solid. So if Tank Dell gets back to, and I don't think this is going to happen early in the year, but like it could happen sort of late in the year where Tank Dell kind of gets back to what we saw him be in his first and second year potentially, but the volume is not going to be great, and so I don't think he's going to be sort of a starter-worthy player, but he could have some flex moments, and I think definitely a plug-and-play guy in certain opportunities with good matchups, but could end up being like a darling down the stretch where he potentially like could like win leagues for you this year. I don't know. We'll see. I think a lot has to happen between now and then, obviously, but this is like a 5%, speculative suggestion of where like, hey, what up? Check the status. We're 5%. This is likely of Tank Dell being a league winner, but where he's going in drafts, and I don't think you're even drafting him, but this is someone you're going to pick up in the, he's off of draft boards. So this is someone you're picking up off the wire when you finally see it. But just to mention his name and sort of why maybe I'm off of maybe these other guys not named Nico Ballins is that Jaden Higgins sure was decent last year in a couple of moments. And, Jalen Noel, I don't think he's even relevant in this offense, at least for fantasy purposes. But again, Tank Dell could be like that guy who just randomly pops out of nowhere late in the year, overtakes Jalen Noel even as like the wide receiver 3 option in this offense, maybe even slots into the wide receiver 2 over Jaden Higgins potentially, right? So we'll see. Yeah, but again, it's a long shot. And to Walt's point, like that injury was so bad. It really is just like, can he even get back to the NFL? Can he even just play anymore, right? Like, do they even want him on the field? So does he even want to be on the field? I know he wants to be, but like, is he going to be viable on the field? We'll see. We'll see. Right. While saying he'd avoid Montgomery too, I was saying I don't know if I was muted for this. Maybe I was, but I was basically saying I am fine taking David Montgomery where he's going purely because he's going to get the majority of the carries, and it's a good offense, it's a solid offense with an amazing defense. And if they get short yardage scenarios consistently, like we could see games where David Montgomery has like 15 carries, 40 yards, and like 3 touchdowns or some shit, right? Or like 15 carries, 50 yards, and like 2 touchdowns and 1 through the air or some shit like that, right? Like, so just this won't surprise me if David Montgomery ends up with like 250 carries at the end of the year, over 1,000 yards, and like 12 touchdowns. Solid RB2, borderline RB1 status, but purely because this team is just going to be in short yardage scenarios consistently. That's my sort of take on David Montgomery. Walt saying it won't happen. We'll see. I'd be willing to put a prediction down and stand on business. Actually, you know what? Let me do that. Let me go ahead and put a prediction down, a season-long prediction. I'm going to say it, and obviously just assuming David Montgomery plays like at least 16 games, I'm going to say David Montgomery finishes with 250 plus carries, 1K yards, and 10 plus touchdowns. The year. Add. All right. Added it to my predictions. So now we got 2 predictions that are going on this year. So the James Cook will finish above Jonathan Taylor in PPR fantasy points this year. And then I think David Montgomery is going to finish this year with 250 plus carries, 1,000 yards, and 10 plus touchdowns. That's probably his ceiling, but like, so that is a bold take, but I'm just going to say it's possible, right? That is his ceiling though. So don't take this and just run with it and start reaching for David Montgomery. I'm literally projecting his probably best case scenario, but like you pick him up here in the 7th round around guys like DeAndre Swift and Bashaw Tutin and Jalen Warren, I'd be happy to pick him up in this range, right? Don't forget who else the Texans have in the backfield. You mean Woody Marks? Jawar Jordan? British Brooks? I'm not worried about any of these guys. Woody Marks had his opportunity last year to show us if he could be sort of the number one guy or a viable starter in this offense, and it didn't really pan out. He had 196 carries, 703 yards, only 2 touchdowns. Well, think about it this way. They went out and traded for, or maybe signed, I forget if they traded for or signed David Montgomery. They clearly had issues in the red zone on the ground. There were instances where Woody Marks was getting like 3 back-to-back carries because they had no one else. And he got stuffed every single time. He only finished with 2 touchdowns on the ground. So clearly they were struggling in that regard. And that is where David Montgomery excels. And we saw him do that in Detroit. So that was a clear need for them. And so he steps into that role and is the short yardage option for them. That's just, maybe, again, I'm too optimistic about this. But the way I see Woody Marks, unless he takes a huge step forward in that respect this year, which he could, then David Montgomery is going to be that guy. And I think it's just a no-brainer for them to give him the carries in that respect. O-line sucks. Yeah, true. O-line does suck. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. I don't think it's his fault. Like I said earlier, read something about the Texans saying they're going to split carries. Oh, you read something about the Texans? Interesting. Say they're going to split carries? Interesting. I mean, fair. Totally fair. And just to argue, I guess, for why that doesn't maybe worry me too much. Woody Marks, again, cool player, but is he really going to take that big of a step forward? I don't know. From what I saw last year, it wasn't promising. It didn't look promising. David Montgomery has been in scenarios where he did split the backfield with another player, like Detroit, again, 219 carries in 2023, 185 in 2024, and 158. So it's gone down the last 3 years. I guess while they trust Jahmyr Gibbs more and more, that makes sense. But again, the efficiency is great. The touchdowns were still pretty much there. And I don't think David Montgomery gets under 200 carries. I think he at least hits 200 carries. Like, again, I'm projecting he gets 250. That's my bold take. But I think he at least gets 200 and maybe 8 touchdowns on the ground. So, yeah. Woody Marks was a rookie, though, and the O-line was awful. Yeah, true. I get that. I get that. But they aggressively went out and got this guy. Maybe not like super aggressively, but they clearly have a need, and he fills that need for them. There's usually quite the difference between year 1 and year 2 for an RB. Oh, okay. But that's behind the lines O-line. True. Okay, I mean, you guys are right. I mean, you guys are making good points. So maybe I do have to temper my expectations for David Montgomery a little bit. Like, he is 29, so does he have a lot of, juice left, so to speak? You are drafting him down here, ADP 23, right? RB 23. So 7th, 8th round. Maybe I'm too high on David Montgomery. I'm not going to take my prediction back, though. It might be kooky for some, but hey, fuck it. I'm riding with my boy D-Mont this year. I love Monty, but those O-lines aren't close to being the same. You're right. You're right. And that is the one thing that's going to really determine how well this pans out for David Montgomery. But if we're talking about Woody Marks being a guy who I'm worried about, I'm not, and I think David Montgomery is still good enough in goal line and short yardage scenarios that even if the O-line isn't spectacular, and I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year, they definitely are working to improve that, at least I would hope, then, we'll see, where that pans out to. But yeah, you guys are making great points, and honestly, it's hard for me to argue against that because it's all true, right? It's all true. But I think maybe my optimism is just a little, and my maybe David Montgomery belief is overriding my reason and logic in this scenario. And so, I might be the guy who ends up with David Montgomery in all my leagues this year because I pick him up when everybody else is avoiding him. But if I'm picking him up, it's probably as my RB3 anyways, right? It's round 7. So I probably have already picked up guys like, I'm sure someone like a Javonte Williams or even like a James Cook or something as my wide receiver RB1. even a Chase Brown I'll probably have already picked up or something at that point, right? So I don't need David Montgomery to even be an RB2 for me, but at least he's like a depth piece where if I need him to plug and play or like someone gets hurt above him or something like that, he's an easy, solid RB2, RB3 plug-in where, you know, again, he's just depth, right? Solid depth where I know he's at least good for like 10 to 14 points a week. That's it. And that's all. And that's what I'm drafting him to be. So anyways, last point I'll make about the Houston Texans before we move on is Jaden Higgins. So Jaden Higgins, rookie last year, people saw him do some good things in a couple moments. There were some moments where I think it was down the 3 games where Nico Collins missed, where we saw Jaden Higgins really step up and at least get targeted a bunch. And then we started seeing him get touchdowns. And that was, I think, where maybe people were a little surprised. He's a big dude, but he wasn't necessarily being targeted in the red zone early on. And then again, once Nico Collins went down, they started utilizing him in that respect. And then once Nico Collins came back, his volume took a step back. But he still at least finished with a decent game, week 17. So it's not like, okay, we're going to go out of our way to draft this guy. He's not being drafted that highly. He's actually being drafted as a wide receiver 54 down here in the sort of 13th, 14th round area. But I probably would avoid him. He's essentially a handcuff for Nico Collins. So if you pick up Nico Collins, stash Jaden Higgins on your bench. But other than that, this team is just not going to have more than one pass catcher that lights it up each and every week. I just don't believe it. So yeah, that's really all to say. He could be good. He could be solid, right? But I think it just requires a little bit more volume. And again, the only time we saw him get any decent volume was right around where Nico Collins missed time. So, you know, that's my take on Jaden Higgins. Like, I think this is probably a little too high. I still would pick up other guys around this area other than him. Those guys being, I'm looking at guys now, and I'm not liking anybody as far as wide receiver goes. But again, in this area, I'm probably looking at tight ends and quarterbacks. So I'm probably picking up like a backup running back, like a Blake Corum or a Baker Mayfield, probably as a quarterback, as my secondary quarterback. Or, you know, for tight ends, I'm probably looking at guys like Dalton Kincaid potentially, but maybe not because I'm kind of off of him this year. Maybe Dallas Goedert I could look at, but I don't like Jaden Higgins here. And again, like, I don't like Jaden Higgins in general unless you already have Nico Collins and he's, again, your Nico Collins handcuff. That's pretty much the best value he has, in my opinion, in this offense that isn't like super pass heavy. So then I did say I wanted to talk about Schultz. So let's talk about Dalton Schultz. Off of draft boards, going as tight end 28. He finished as tight end 11 last year. Got a bit of a slow start, but then came on pretty nicely after the bye. And even with these down games, I think he was acceptable for you because he only had 4 down games out of the last 7, or let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games. Really 11. So 4 out of 11 down games, solid. Let's say 7 out of 11 good games. But the problem was he kind of really pooped the bed when it mattered most, which was week 17 in the championships. That said, super solid for the first 2 weeks of the fantasy playoffs. 21.6 points in week 15, 14.5 points in week 16. So solid tight end performance. In fact, had touchdowns in both of those weeks. Definitely helped you get to the fantasy championship, but might have contributed to your loss if you were counting on him to do anything in week 17, right? So it's interesting. He never had 2 bad games in a row, but he never had more than 3 good games in a row, which still not bad, but you know, I don't know. I think he's being underdrafted, to be honest. Texans drafted a tight end in the second round, so I don't know what to think about Dalton. Oh, interesting. Okay, actually, I didn't know that. So let me go ahead and look at their So you're talking about not Foster Moreau, because I think Foster Moreau, is definitely not a rookie. You're talking about Derek Graham, Marlon Klein. Yeah, Marlon Klein. Okay, so interesting how Marlon Klein is listed as the 4th tight end on the depth chart. I don't know if we'll see that change as we get closer to the season, but it's something to look out for sure. And I think, Marlon Klein from Michigan. Let's at least look at his. Let's at least look at his highlights. And that's where we'll probably end it here. But if I see, second round, that's actually pretty high. So if I see sort of a lot of, training camp hasn't even started, so it will change. Yeah, for sure. And it looks like he was injured or something, coming off of an injury or something like that. So, but if I see any movement in this depth chart situation where they decide to move him up the depth chart, like if he becomes the 2nd depth chart or tight end, then I'll probably be a little bit more worried. And I think it also depends on what we see in preseason. But for now, I think Dalton Schultz is safe-ish, but a lot can change between now and, we still, again, have like 6 or 7 weeks plus until the season even starts. So, but let's see if this guy passes the eye test. Not really jumping out like a Tyler Warren did, but Tyler Warren was a 1st-round pick in the NFL, and this guy is 2nd-round pick. So clearly you can't compare the talent or anything like that. But it looks pretty solid. I don't think he starts the year as tight end 1, but if he was tight end 1 by the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised. Interesting. Okay. So, because we have seen Dalton Schultz miss time before. Maybe not last year, but there were a couple of years where he only played 15 games. So maybe that factors in. Maybe they just want depth as well. I think that scenario would probably be more likely, Walt, if Dalton Schultz gets hurt and misses time, and then this guy comes in and starts and begins to become a bigger part of this offense for sure. But for now, I think I'm not as worried as maybe other folks are about Marlon Klein coming in and stealing a bunch of looks from Dalton Schultz. But it is something to be worried about for sure. Like, this could be a situation where it's like a Dawson Knox who just like comes in and steals a touchdown randomly from Dalton Kincaid or something like that. It's like, are we going to have to worry about this each week? Like, is this going to be a clear situation where like Dalton Schultz just doesn't get all the looks now at tight end anymore? Like, that could be it, where they just kind of split and then neither one is viable, right? Yeah. He looks like he has good, reliable hands, which Dalton has proved he doesn't. Yeah, let's take a look at drops for tight ends, or at least Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, 2 drops last year. Still, for only seeing 42 targets, I think. Or, let's see, targets, Dalton Schultz. Oops. 82 targets, I think. So, yeah. I mean, we'll see. But you're right. Dalton Kincaid has in the past, I think, dropped the ball more than just twice. I don't know. And I wonder if some of these are like we're being a little forgiving on some of these passes, right? Maybe some of these were catchable, and he just didn't finish the route or something like that. I don't know, because sometimes it doesn't count as a drop, but it's like, hey, that actually could have been a better route, or like that ball was, thrown where he should have been, and it was just a miscue or some shit like that. I don't know the exact details, but yeah. So, all right. So, hey, we did it. AFC South complete. Let's see if we can quickly go over. So, not really stoked on CJ Stroud, but he's going as a backup quarterback anyways. David Montgomery, like I said, I think I just put that prediction up. I think he can finish as a 250 carry, 1,000-yard, 10-plus touchdown type guy. So that's my ceiling for him. But, yeah. Oh, apparently Klein is good after the catch. Okay, nice. Yeah, I mean, that's always nice to see from a tight end, right? That's literally guys like Kittle, Tyler Warren, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, the elite tight ends that we see, all excellent yards after the catch. Hard to take down those type of, guys, fast as well, right, for their size. So yeah, Nico Collins, pretty high on him. I think he's solid this year. He's just solid. And then Jaden Higgins, again, not picking him up unless I need to have a Nico Collins handcuff. But even then, there's probably other guys I'd rather pick up. And then Jalen Noel avoiding Dalton Schultz. Probably good for the first half of the year until maybe Klein starts to pick up. But yeah. So, all right. That's about it. That'll do it. We hit 3 hours, so that's pretty solid. I'm going to go ahead and call it now because I actually am getting called by the missus. So I gotta go ahead and see what's good. But hey, thank y'all so much for tuning in. As always, appreciate y'all. Walt, see you later. Nico, Zuthez, all y'all, Matty Dubs. We'll see y'all next time. We're going to probably stream this Friday, so don't forget to tune in. And yeah, have a great rest of your evening. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.